I just clapped the board.
And we're rolling.
Yeah.
So, welcome to episode 2 of the Bluntzillavideo podcast. I'm live again with
Kevin Labonte.
And we got a stack of movies to talk about. And I think it's only right that the first one that we talk about, just because I'm focusing in on it right here, and since this was a major heavy-duty loss, John Singleton directed Boyz in the Hood. Is that his first movie? I think it is.
This is his first feature-length movie, yeah.
Yeah, so his first feature-length film, he was young as hell. He was like in his early 20s, and just made a masterpiece. And this is a movie that I've watched since I can remember. Like, we talked about The Goonies when we were downstairs picking these movies out, but this is one of those movies I've been watching since that time, like when I was a kid, watching The Goonies, watching, different kid movies. But also, this is kind of like a kid movie in a way, if you think about it. It's about, like, a group of friends and what they go through, and I think it's really realistic and really tragic, but also, like, highly interesting and amazing to watch. And the characters are so, like, colorful, if that makes sense. Like, you got, like, fucking Cuba Gooding, who's, like, this, like, the guy that's on the fence between, like, trying to be a good guy, having a job and all that shit, but, like, still being around all these psychos. And then you got Ricky, who I think doesn't really give a shit about the gang life, doesn't really acknowledge it, and that's what initially kills his ass. But what's your take on Boyz in the Hood?
Well, like, if you remember the first 10 minutes of it, it played like Stand By Me. Like, hey, you want to go see a dead body? And that, in the Reagan era at the time, like, that's, and it's almost as if the Stand By Me kids got to grow up. And that the Stand By Me kids weren't in a nice neighborhood. They were getting abused and beaten up. And these guys were not growing up in a nice neighborhood. And this is what the result from it. But the influence that film had on black cinema for decades, I'd say, like, you add Poetic Justice to that. And then there's Juice that came out, I think, about the same time.
I think Juice was around, like, 92, 91, 92.
Yeah, and that's when Boyz in the Hood came out from, like, around that time. And those two films, when I was growing up, because I was a teenager at the time, so when they came out, like, those were, like, Boyz in the Hood was definitely a better film. Juice was a more contained film. But Boyz in the Hood was so influential, from the soundtrack to the actors. I mean, it brought Ice Cube, who at that point had done a little bit of acting, but he really shone in that one.
Definitely.
And then, you've got Cuba Gooding Jr. like doing a breakout role, and unfortunately, after Jerry Maguire, hasn't done anything really good since. But John Singleton was a visionary, and he brought in, like, Menace to South Central, or Menace to Society, sorry, and just so many films.
Well, I think like it, like, as you wouldn't get a movie like Menace to Society. I think it was like the Hughes brothers. Like, a couple of brothers directed that.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get movies like that. You wouldn't get movies like Belly. You wouldn't get movies like, any of, like, the quote-unquote hood films that we got, because when you think about it, like, there was the blaxploitation stuff in the 70s and stuff, but, like, it was really, like, I think Boyz in the Hood is the Goodfellas of hood movies.
Absolutely. Like, you consider before, like, there was gangster movies before Goodfellas and before Godfather, but before Boyz in the Hood, it was New Jack City, right? That was, and that wasn't even a realistic depiction of it. That was a romanticized version of the New York gangster, and this one was the streets of LA, and it was, like, it was real, it was raw, and it had its funny moments, it had its touching moments. Lawrence Fishburne was just hilarious as the father, even though he was stern and everything, but I laughed every time he was talking.
I love the Lawrence Fishburne character, and I think the New Jack City is more like a comic booky take on the subject matter, and I think, like, Boyz in the Hood is more of, like, it's I think it's so iconic and so memorable because everybody can relate to being a kid, everyone can relate to being a teenager, and not everyone can relate to being from a shitty neighborhood like they were from, but it's something like, they're all kids and they're fucking around walking down the train tracks. I think every kid that I've ever met has done that. You know what I mean? And every kid has, like, when you get a car, you, like, go and meet up with your friends like they do in the film, and, like, minus the shootout, you know what I mean? Like, we get shit like that. And I think another movie I want to point out that John Singleton did was a movie called Higher Learning,
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
Amazing film. Michael Rappaport is in that. He's like a big thing right now. Michael Rappaport, like he's made this insane comeback. Like the last time I remember seeing him was like the Chappelle Show and fucking Deep Blue Sea and stuff. But Higher Learning is a fantastic film. That's one that you don't really hear a lot of people talking about, but it's one of the best. It's great. I love that film.
Yeah, I think that one that came out around the same time, or like I don't know if it definitely wasn't the same time, but when Columbine shooting happened, that's when that movie was not talked about as much, because it took place with a school shooting near the end, and that
it got brushed under the rug.
People find it uncomfortable and they don't want to talk about that type of stuff. But the issues that it brought up with that film are still, we're still issues we're still dealing with today. But another film that John Singleton directed that many people might have forgotten is the remake of Shaft.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, with Samuel L. Jackson and like that was
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale before he became big, right off of American Psycho. Actually, and that's the funny thing, is when I saw that movie and then I saw Equilibrium, I said that man is Batman. Because he had the billionaire playboy down in Shaft, and he had the physicality that Batman would be required for in Equilibrium. But with Shaft, I mean, the interesting thing about that movie is that yes, it's considered a remake, but it's not, because they brought Roundtree back. Because his father is the original Shaft from the 70s.
Yeah.
And now there's a third one coming out.
Really?
With another generation of Shaft. So all three of them are in this movie. All three of them are John Shaft.
Wow.
And it's going to be like it's
so
coming out this summer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that. So basically, with that, I guess I think fuck, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Oh, one thing I wanted to say about Shaft was the remake of Shaft rather is I fucking love that movie, and I love this the scene where the guy shouting from the balcony. I remember when I first seen that. That's that movie. I watched that movie when I was a couple of years into hardcore film watching and stuff, and it was this is awesome. I watched the original Shaft. I think there's one called Shaft Goes to Africa.
Yeah, there was a whole series of Shaft.
Yeah, so he's a sort of a superhero. He's kind of like a Dolomite character, in a way, right? I've only watched one Dolomite film. I have all of them, but I've only watched one of them. But those are some insane fucking films to watch. Hilarious films. You think back in the 70s when these came out, and that's why I think so many people try to emulate stuff from the 70s, because all the fucking movies from the 70s are way better than today's movies.
They took risks and they did things without worrying about the political consequences. You consider the blaxploitation films. I mean, these are films that were made for a particular audience, and they weren't even very paying respectful to that audience at the same time.
Yeah,
that audience ate them up because they knew that they were movies.
Yeah,
right?
but and they got a slew of black superheroes, the Black Godfather,
Superfly,
Shaft, the Mac. Speaking of Superfly, that movie kind of they did a remake of Superfly, and that movie's been swept under the fucking rug.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
No one even I don't even think anyone thinks of that film.
I've not seen it, and I don't plan on seeing it.
Oh, it wasn't that I mean, it was okay, but it was definitely not that. It was very forgettable. I forgot that it was even a thing, and my uncle brought it up. He was like, "Did you see that new Superfly film?" And I was like, "Yeah, I forgot all about it."
No. And that's the thing about remakes that are I mean, we get upset about the remakes when they come out because oh my god, they're gonna ruin our favorite movies. But half the time, if it's not a good remake, you're not even gonna remember. This brings up another film that's in our stack here, Pet Sematary. That movie was scary as shit when it came out, right? Because kids are scary.
Oh yeah.
And the remake came out, and it got produced and was greenlit based on the success of It, the remake for It. And everyone thought, oh well, now's the time for Stephen King movies. We can really do them justice and everything. But they didn't do it. The reviews are coming in and they're just saying it's not as good. The original was just better.
I've seen the remake, and first of all, I gotta say the original is amazing, and I think the original holds one of the scariest moments on cinema, and I think a lot of people would agree, especially a lot of people like my age and like a little bit older. The scene with, I think her name was Zelda, right? The sister Zelda, like the fucking
aunt.
yeah, no, the sister of like the wife.
Yeah.
Like she's all like deformed and
yeah,
stuff. And it's so fucking insanely gross to watch. And then you get the remake, and I don't think it was done like nearly as creepy, but I do think that the remake did make good use of, I'm not trying to spoil this for you, but I'm just going to say it makes good use of a dumbwaiter. Like, if you don't know what a dumbwaiter is, because it's kind of an obscure thing.
It's not the guy you don't tip.
Yeah, like, I don't own a fucking, I've never met anyone with a dumbwaiter, but basically it's like a little elevator thing used for transporting, you know, food or like laundry up and down throughout flights of the house. And there's a really cool scene involving Zelda in that, and it's very, very creepy. And I went and saw this movie by myself, and I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's anywhere near as good as the original. And even with like the little bit of changes they did with the story and whatnot, I wasn't the biggest fan of. One thing I will say, I do have to mention this, the scene where the I'm blanking on the name of the people in the Pet Cemetery. What's the fucking last name of them?
Like the characters?
Yeah,
or?
what's the character's last name?
Well, let's see. It's blah. Jeez.
Anyways,
you don't even say it.
The father character.
There's Judd Crandall. He's the Fred Gwynn for the Munsters. That's, I mean, because he was.
It doesn't say the husband's last name.
Just Creeds.
Creeds. Okay,
yeah.
So the fucking Creeds.
Not the Croods. The Creeds.
The Creeds. The Creeds. So the Creed father. The scene in which the Creed father is doing. He works at a hospital, and basically this victim comes in, and he becomes the ghost that talks to Creed throughout the film. But the way that they do it in this film is fucking insane. When I first seen like the trailer and stuff, I was like, okay, that's pretty nuts, but they actually did it really well. And there's a scene where basically, this isn't really spoiling anything, it happens, you know what's going to happen. A kid comes into the fucking emergency room, and his brains are exposed, and one of the nurses looks down, a young nurse looks down and goes, oh my god, I can see his brains, and she starts panicking and freaks out and leaves the room. And I think that's very realistic, because I think there's a lot of people that take like these high-end jobs, like nursing or like stuff like that. You're going to see crazy shit, and I don't think a lot of people are ready for that. And I think that they did that very well in that film, and I like the interactions between Creed and the ghost. But once again, other than that part, I think that they did it better in the original.
Yeah, I mean, the original was restricted by budget, and so creativity came in terms of how the story was told. And, I don't know, to me, it was a perfect storm for when the original came out. It came out at a time when it hadn't been out yet.
No, not yet.
So it didn't have that level to live up to. And Stephen King movies were rare. They didn't come out all the time.
Right.
This is before, like, Langoliers and Tommy Knockers and all that crap. And it was good because it was different, right? This was a horror movie that wasn't about the slasher and the killer at the time. This was about, like, what would you do if your child died and you had this terrible choice to make, right? And they played that up a lot more than what the remake is almost missing that heart to it. Like, you cared about these characters a little bit more, because in today's age, you got to get to the monster, got to get to the killing, you got to jump to that right away. You don't have time to set up the atmosphere that's happening. But it seems like we're on a remake kick, because I'm noticing, like, we have Chucky, well, we don't have Chucky, we have Child's Play.
We have Child's Play 1. Oh, okay, so we have Child's Play The Killer DVD collection, which houses the first, not the first, rather, it houses Child's Play 2, 3, Bride of Chucky, and Seed of Chucky. So this isn't even the whole collection anymore, but...
and it never was.
It never was, because it was missing Part 1. So Part 1 is actually owned by MGM and 20th Century Fox.
Also known as Disney.
And the rest of them are owned by Universal. So that's kind of a piss off. Like, you buy this fucking cool little box set, and it's not even the entire box set, which is a piss off. But I'm really looking forward to this new...
the new movie with Mark Hamill?
Is Mark Hamill in it?
Mark Hamill is the voice of Chucky.
What? No fucking way.
Yeah, it's like if you've seen the trailer, it's a different take on Chucky. It's basically, you know, with the rise of Google Home and Amazon Echo and whatever Siri and all that other crap, like with all these smart devices, it's a doll that you can connect to and you program it just like you do with all these other smart devices, and you allow this device to control other devices like your lights and shit like that, and that's where it's straying so far away from the original concept that I think it could be good, but at the same time I have my reservations. I mean, I love Mark Hamill and I think Mark Hamill would do an amazing job, but it's this other story elements that they're bringing in that I don't think are great, which brings up the reason why Child's Play 1 isn't in that box set, because it was owned by somebody else. The makers of this movie own the rights to the first Child's Play and are able to remake that movie ad nauseum as much as they want, but they cannot bring in any of the new characters that were introduced and without the rest of the series. So that's why there's a Child's Play TV series being developed that's going to be coming out soon. That's going to take the same story arcs that we've already done with, you know, Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, and all that, and continue that story. And this movie's a totally different universe. It's a reimagining of the series, and if reimaginings are any indication, like Planet of the Apes, Tim Burton's reimagining, it's not going to go anywhere. So I'm curious to see it. I think this is probably going to fall in the same way as the RoboCop remake, where it doesn't have the same heart, doesn't have the same story elements, the concepts that made Child's Play such a, like, well, I mean, let's face it, Chucky is one of the iconic horror monsters
of the 80s,
of the modern era.
Yeah, of like the, you know, because when you think of the tiers of monsters, you think of like the way I look at it, it goes like your Dracula, Frankenstein, Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Wolfman, all that kind of...
Those are golden era.
Golden era, yeah. And then you have kind of like the 50s, which is like the giant monsters and whatnot. And then you got the 60s, which has like the real kind of like getting into some weird shit with the Herschel Gordon Lewis films. Yeah. And, you know, Rosemary's Baby, which I love. And then getting into the 70s where it just goes fucking bang. And you just get this explosion. And then you get the 80s with all like... Because the 70s, you can't really... There's no, like, really subset of people.
You gotta consider Michael Myers started in the 70s.
Okay, true enough.
Leatherface, Texas
Leatherface,
Chainsaw Massacre. So, like...
Exorcist.
That period, as soon as Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween hit the theaters, that's the era of the modern movie monster.
And Black Christmas.
And Black Christmas, of course. Yeah. Bob Clark.
Canadian.
Made the best comedy ever, Porky's.
And I love Christmas Story, too.
Yeah.
But okay, what I was going to get at was, okay, so we got those guys of the 70s, and then the 80s, there's everyone. Hellraiser, fucking Freddy, Jason. You know, and then all the little kind of like solo slasher films of, well, Sleepaway Camp. But then you got like Pieces, The Burning, fucking Night of the Demons. There's a lot of those. You got Demons. You got like all these crazy fucking movies coming out. And there's like, when you look at the Mount Rushmore of horror, if you will, of the 80s, I think Chucky's probably going to be up there.
Chucky's face is definitely on there because he's iconic. You see him, you know exactly what he is. Like, yeah, you could show that to somebody who's not a horror fan, and they know that's Child's Play.
That's 100% fact right there. And I've experienced that, and like I know people that like my fucking grandma knew who Chucky was. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like I think with Chucky, like, because I don't really know much about the new one. I think I've seen the trailer, but that's it. I think that they're gonna fuck up because the reason to me why the first Child's Play is so good is because it has that voodoo element. It has that cop element. It's kind of like this weird, like you know, mystery film, and I love it. I love the voodoo aspect. I love the scene where Chucky goes and meets with his voodoo practitioner, John. How you doing, John? Like, I love that fucking scene, man. It's so hardcore, and like the end up, or like you know, the wrap up of that scene is amazing, and even like the ending of the film is crazy. Like, I think the ending has a line where he's like, now do you believe me? And he goes, yeah, but who the hell's gonna believe me? You know, like it's unreal. It's such a fucked up concept. And then I even love part 2 and 3, and even part, you know, Bride of Chucky I love in a way, and then Seed I think it starts going downhill, and then the next two, I just was like, wow.
Most horror movies have a diminishing returns at some point, but
Yeah.
the reason Child's Play like hit a nerve was the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Right.
Like, you may not remember it, obviously.
No.
But
I know what they are.
You know of it, but
I know of them.
So the Cabbage Patch Kids came out in like 1985, and it was the first time that there was actually riots in the stores at Christmas time to get a Cabbage Patch doll for Christmas. So you had people getting, fist fights over these dolls, and that's why Chucky looks like he does. It's to look like a Cabbage Patch Kid as much as they can without getting copyright infringements. And that's that reason why the mother's like, sorry, I could get you all the accessories, I couldn't get you a real good guy doll, and so she results to going onto the black market to get one. That's what was happening at the time, and that resonated with parents, and it also freaked them out because they have a doll that looks just like the doll that's in their kids' room.
Right.
So I've
never looked at it that way, honestly.
Yeah, I want to say Sam Fleischer, but that's the guy who did the Superman cartoon. The guy who basically did the voice of Chucky.
Oh, Brad Dourif.
Brad Dourif. Well, he was.
Yeah, he's a voice and the actor.
He was.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Because he also did Roger Rabbit.
You sure? No, that's a different guy.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now
Brad.
we gotta bring out the old Google.
Okay, so Brad Dourif, he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He was in Exorcist 3. He was in Halloween, the remake, as sheriff, sheriff, which
also
was
in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, he's in Lord of the Rings. He's that one fucking guy, Wormtongue or some shit.
Yeah.
Is that what his name was, Wormtongue?
I'm pretty sure you're right that it was Brad Dourif. But let's see. So if this is our first drink of the night, I guess, because I'm bringing out the Google.
Yeah. The first drink.
Yeah, Brad Dourif, and he was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Lord of the Rings, Dune.
Oh, he was in Dune.
Alien Resurrection, Death Machine.
Oh yeah, Resurrection.
Jungle Fever. Another one of those movies.
That's a Spike Lee film, right?
Yeah. Where? Oh, maybe I was wrong. I could have sworn that he was the voice of Roger Rabbit. No,
Roger Rabbit is that one fucking skinny dude. He was maybe he's not a skinny dude, but either fucking way, he's memorable as hell. He's been in movies though.
Oh, it was Charles Fleischer.
Let me see a picture of him.
Which is why I got Sam Fleischer and Chucky wrong.
Is there a photo of the actual guy? You see him? Oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, because he's in Nightmare on Elm Street. He plays the fucking doctor, the sleep doctor.
They all cross over once you haven't seen these movies in a while.
Yeah. See, Max Fleischer did do those cartoons back in the day. Yeah. We had a couple of tapes of those actually.
I have them on DVD. Those are great cartoons. But
fuck yeah.
So we're going into again with the remake territory, and we already touched upon the new one coming out, It Part 2. I haven't seen the first one, and I know people are going to be like, what the hell? You haven't seen the first one.
Well,
but to me, that the original of this with Tim Curry, that was enough for me. Because I know looking back, and you watch, I've seen clips of it, and he was like, that's not as good. But
yeah,
the feeling that you got when you first saw that, because you hadn't seen anything like that on television, no less. Not even in the theaters. This wasn't a movie that was in theaters. This was on television, where kids could stay up a little bit later and watch Georgie Boy get his arm ripped off.
I gotta say this, man. Being a person that grew up with it, same with you. I'm actually almost done the novel. It's been in my car since I've owned that car, which is over a year. But I got 400 pages left. I'll get to it. But
did you get to the orgy yet?
No, I've been waiting for the orgy the whole fucking time I've been reading it. I'm like, where's this orgy, man? I'm ready to fucking.
That's
I'm ready
how they
to party.
Get you to read it.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the orgy. If the orgy's not as fucking explosive as I'm hoping, I'm gonna be very pissed. But I think that the remake, I have all these things against the remake because I'm so attached to the original, and I think that. From what I've read in the book, which is 70% of the book, Mike plays such a pivotal character, and his character was fucking raped in the remake. He is a nobody. Not literally, but figuratively. He as
they wash him over, he becomes the token.
He becomes the token black guy in the fucking little cocksucker fucking actor who plays Ben Hanscom. Like, I just hate that fucking kid, man. I do not I think that Ben Haystack from the original is way better. He's fucking way cooler. I just think that kid's a little fucking clown type. Like, especially, I can point out two parts. When he says, when he's talking to Beverly Marsh, and he says, like, some little stupid off-putting thing. I forget what it is. He's like, she's like, I don't get you. And he's like, there's nothing to get. I'm like, I'm ready to punch this kid in the face. And then another part where he's in the library and the chick's like, don't you got any friends? And he's like, can I have the book now? I would have been like, fuck you, lady. Like, even if I was 12, I still would have been like, hey, I'm reading this book, fuck off.
Well, like, that's the thing with this modern take on it. I mean, there's an entire generation of people who have never even seen the first one, right? To them, that was like, they're aware of Pennywise just because of, Tim Curry played it so well and made it such an iconic character, and for them to and it was a joke to them, right? So like, they see it as a joke because of all the images that they saw. It definitely does not stand up to today's standards, and so you have a new generation of people who are actually scared of it because to them it was a joke, right? Because it's something that they've seen thousands of times, and we live in the age where The Conjuring and Poltergeist can be put side by side, and you can definitely be scared by one more than the other.
Yeah.
And so it is the same thing, where finally these people were scared of it, and that's why they were like, "Oh my god, this is so frightening," because they never experienced anything like that before.
I think that this new It movie got all this exposure, and it's so well known because it stars a bunch of fucking kids, and the majority
great actors too. Yeah.
Well, I mean, except for that Ben Hanscom pissed me off. And one thing, I think I pointed this out in a video recently, but the blonde-haired bully went to HB Beale, which is the high school I went to, which, I mean, this is like 10.
That's why you hate him.
Yeah. No, I like that kid. He's the kid I like the most. He doesn't even say one word in the fucking movie, but, I forget where I was going with that, but, like, my thing with it, and the reason why I hold it so near and dear is because I watched it, like, when I was a kid. I'm telling you, my dad he did not give a shit. He would just say, let's watch It. Do you want to watch It? And I'd be like, what's It? And he'd be like, well, it's this scary movie with a clown. Like, look at the cover. And then in the first 10 minutes, like, you gotta imagine, I'm like a little fucking kid. I'm like 4 or 5 years old.
All right, kid, off to bed.
Yeah, no, and then, like, honestly, like, pretty much. Or he'd fall asleep and I'd be left to fucking watch this. This is a side note. My dad fell asleep while we were watching a Benny Hill tape. And I was a young kid and I cried. This is before I knew how to work the VCR. I sat there on the couch and cried because I hated it. I fucking couldn't stand.
Hate Benny Hill?
I love British stuff now, but when I was a kid, I was like, I cannot stand this. This is fucked. Why is he running around? He's a rapist. What the fuck is going on here?
Oh, so I never thought that as a kid because I didn't know what that was. But
the only reason I knew what rape was because
you watched Clockwork Orange.
Well, I'm just
the remake of It became really popular too because it was just riding the wave of Stranger Things. And it really hit that nostalgia feel. Like, Stranger Things reminded us that, oh my god, we love the 80s. And it was basically playing on that, and was almost as if it was trying to be, or not trying to be, it felt like a more violent R-rated version of Stranger Things, which everyone kind of loved. And I think that's why it took off, whereas Pet Sematary didn't, is because it wasn't really relying on this nostalgia. Pet Sematary remake was relying on people having seen Pet Sematary, and not a lot of people had, because it was a movie, not a TV show like it was.
Right.
And it didn't have any nostalgia. Like, there's not really a nostalgic link to it, as it had. So the sequel that's coming out, I do hope it does well, because it's made in Ontario, and there's a lot of jobs that were being created by that show. So I hope it does well. But at the same time, it's the original that holds like
that spot in your heart.
Yeah,
I think, and it's cool because both of us being in southwestern Ontario, where like movies like It are being made, and like movies like The Shape of Water and shit like that, like made in St. Thomas. Like it's good because we are in that industry, and we want to be getting jobs on shit like that, you know what I mean? But one more thing I have to say about It is I think the reason why it did so good is not only because of the Stranger Things thing element, and it also helped that the kid from Stranger Things was one of the more likable characters, quote unquote. I think that like we're in an age where kids are like, because of the internet, they grow up way faster and they know more shit, and like I think like they become fascinated with stuff, as we all do, and they learn everything about the characters. They become obsessed. That's why there's a million fucking Instagram pages based on the It characters, based on the Stranger Thing characters and stuff like that. And all these kids, that's why I think, was It rated R?
Yeah, it was R rated.
Okay, so obviously a lot of parents don't give a shit, which is a good thing, because I was one of those cocksucker kids, but I really think that this sequel is going to be better. I hope that Mike gets way more of a, if they follow the story and like Mike is the guy that stuck around, I think that's when he's going to shine. I think like, I hope that they open it up. I just hope that Mike gets his part in the movie, because I feel so far he's just been totally fucked, and there's way too many good stories that got left out that should have been told that weren't. Like, everything involving Mike and his father in the book is gold. That could be a movie on its own. I think anyone would agree to that. And like, yeah, I'm looking forward to this new one, but I don't have the biggest hopes for it because of the first part. Like, I don't think it was that great. I mean, it was okay, but I wasn't a fan of the amount of CG that they relied on. I know there was a lot of practical in that, but I know that they relied on a lot of CG, and I think it was shot well and all that, but I just, like, same with Kevin, I think that the original just hits home for some reason.
Except for part 2. Part 2 was, I remember watching the first part of it, because it was a 2-parter on TV, and the second part was just a letdown, which is why I'm a little hesitant about the second one.
Right.
Just because nobody cares about the adults. We cared about the kids.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it is kind of like, it's like the first part of it is like kind of like Boyz n the Hood. It's like a Goonies kind of thing, and like that's why those movies are so interesting to people, because
it harkens back to Stephen King's other movie, Stand By Me, which was a massive hit, right? And
amazing film.
Yeah, and that's like you said, it hits back to that. When, as adults, we want to see movies that reflect and remind us of our childhood,
right?
And that's why it can be R-rated and still do amazing, because it's the adults who are paying to go see it.
Yeah,
and it forced a change in the Deadpool 2. So in Deadpool 2, it was before it came out, and he's in the car and he's talking about like, now I'm in the same my name is in the same category as Jesus Christ, because Passion of the Christ was number 1, followed by Deadpool, and then he, in the once Deadpool thing, says, now I'm in the same category as Jesus Christ and It.
That's hilarious.
Because they changed it, because it became one of the highest grossing R-rated films of all time.
But I think that had a lot to do with the amount of people that like grew up watching the show, and even like adults and stuff,
and that clown hysteria that was going around, where everyone kept saying that they were
yeah,
seeing
but I think
around.
that was all a publicity stunt. I think that was a publicity stunt for the film, because there's people like in I've heard stories of people saying that like they seen like balloons tied to stuff like right before the opening, like in like the middle of nowhere and stuff, right? And it's like, okay, like it worked. It definitely fucking worked, because that movie made not saying that just because a movie makes a lot of money that doesn't make it good by any means, but it definitely helped. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, the critics have reviewing it, and the people that I know that have seen it that have all said that it was really good. But they are also normies, I guess is what we call the people who didn't grow up with the horror movies and all that. Like these are people that would be like, oh man, like it was the greatest movie ever, and you're like, yeah, I've seen that kill before.
Yeah, yeah. I got an idea. Why don't we talk about a movie that not a lot of people talk about, or that not a lot of people once talked about, but I think ever since it got its, I think it might have been released on like one of those kind of like Shout Factory or Arrow, one of them, and that's I Come in Peace, which is amazing fucking sci-fi cop film, I would say, like a buddy cop film, and it is a buddy cop film, and like the what the hell is his name again? I don't remember. Dolph Lundgren, and like the little, his little buddy in this film. They have such good chemistry, and I love it. I love how I love at the end when he like gives him the jacket, and he's like, "When was this yours?" He's like, "When I was 12." I think it's so cool. Like, this is one of those movies, I wish I had seen it when I was younger. Matter of fact, the first time that I ever heard about this film was through another film called The Sitter. Did you see The Sitter?
Oh, yeah.
With Jonah Hill?
Yeah.
This is what he was watching.
Yeah.
He was watching this, and I was like, what the fuck is that? I need to know what that is. And then...
That's the funny thing is, you say you wish you had saw it when you were a kid. I did see it when I was a kid because I was a massive action movie fan, and to me that was it. It was right. It was after Predator, and I wanted more movies like Predator, and that's what that movie gave me. It was like, this was Predator. I think it was 1990 or 89 is when that came out, if I'm not mistaken.
It doesn't really say. It usually says on the tape.
All right, second drink.
Second drink to the internet. Okay, so I gotta say a few things about this film. I think the reason why this movie kicks so much ass is because Dolph Lundgren, he doesn't play like a guy that like knows he's kick ass, or like he doesn't play a guy that's like all macho-y about it. He plays like a pretty humble dude. Like even his apartment is like decked out like really nice with art, and he's like drinks nice wine and shit like that. Like complete opposite of what you'd think of this character, and I think that's why he's so likable.
He's playing himself because, as we all know, he's a chemist. He's a doctor.
Yeah, I knew something like that.
He's got a really high IQ. Came out in 1990, according to IMDb, which I always find odd because I like when I hear that a movie came out and say Predator. What year did that come out?
I think 1988.
See, that's wrong. It came out in 1985, apparently.
Really?
Which is so odd.
Did you think it was 88 too?
I thought it was 86.
Okay.
Because I thought it came out like just around the same time as Die Hard.
Right.
But no, it came out in 1985.
So this is a little side question. What do you like better out of the Predator? This is the question. So what's better, the Predator sequel, the Alien sequel, like Aliens, or the fucking what was the other one? RoboCop or
RoboCop 2.
I asked someone this a while ago. Yeah, RoboCop 2, Predator 2, Aliens 2, and there was one more. Terminator 2.
Okay.
That's hard. That's okay.
When you add Terminator 2 into it, Terminator 2 wins.
Let's take Terminator 2 out of that equation.
You take because even though they've all had a crossover at some point in time.
In comic form.
Yeah, RoboCop versus Terminator versus Aliens versus Predator was an actual comic book at one point.
Dark Horse, probably, right?
Yeah. But Aliens was the better sequel over Predator 2 and RoboCop 2, in my opinion. Aliens took the premise of the first one and brought it up to 11.
Right.
And really made it increased the level of fear that you would have in that film. RoboCop 2 was kind of more of the same, and it didn't really, to me, it didn't expand too much on the John Murphy or the Alex Murphy character that much, and just things were just happening. That's essentially it. Although that kid actor was amazing. And
that is like the thing with those. Well, not with Aliens, but with RoboCop. I think it's about the villain. Like, it's RoboCop versus the villain.
Yeah.
And, like, with RoboCop 2, like, despite, like, how there's that Kane guy and he's, like, that big CG thing at the end, like, with the CG face, the kid is a very fucking worthy... He was a worthy villain for that film, and I could see him in the gang with fucking Clarence Boddicker in the first one.
If that kid had been the main villain from the thing, and it was him that got put into the robot body... Like, that would be like, you think
that would have been better.
Here's this character who's like, he's all brains. That's really what he is, because he doesn't have the muscle. He's just a little kid.
Yeah.
And then you put that brain in the body of that robot. That would have made that movie better, like 10 times better. I haven't read the original script. There's an original script by Frank Miller that came out, and that was what RoboCop 2 was based off of.
Yeah.
They did do a comic book on that. I didn't read it, but that was going to be where they were taking RoboCop at that point. And then what was the other one? Predator 2. Predator 2 was great because I always wanted to see the Predator in an urban setting.
Yeah. But
it just wasn't the same. It hit a lot of the same beats as the first one, but didn't really give me much more. Other than, the Predator had more screen time. You actually saw him more. But it didn't have the same, like, holy shit, what's happening? Like, you felt fear for the characters in Predator. Yeah. And in this one, you didn't. And the sequel was more just here's the predator killing people. That's what you liked in the first one, right?
Yeah, I think, and
although I did love the alien skull in the trophy room.
Yes, and I think like they did a great job at like riding off the high of Lethal Weapon and basically having Murtaugh be Murtaugh in this fucking film. And like he even dresses the same, like everything about it it's almost like a chapter the way, like, you know, in kind of like my own little mythology. It's like that's him before Lethal Weapon in a way, you know what I mean?
That's what made him too old for that shit.
Yeah, I'm too old for this shit. Like that is like the thing that pushed me over the edge, but fuck, such that we were talking about I Come in Peace, and like the thing about this movie that I think is so crazy is the fact that they mix the buddy cop element with the sci-fi genre, because this isn't something that you usually get. Like it was usually like, you know, there was a drug dealer, or there was like a crooked fucking politician, and that's what it was. But in this case, it's like it's an outer space threat, which is cool. Like even on the cover, it says good cop, bad alien, big trouble, and that's basically what you get. And I think it takes place in California or some shit. It's not in New York.
No, yeah, I think it's California or something.
I think the only thing that would have made this better if it was in New York for me, because I love New York. Like, on the screen.
The claustrophobic, like that came out at the same time. There was another movie that was very similar called Split Second,
right,
with Rutger Hauer, and that was based in London, where it was like half flooded, and for some odd reason they kind of made it like a post-apocalyptic, and rather than just dealing with this creature altogether. But it was very much like that was more claustrophobic feeling, because they were in the sewers, they were in the, you know, hunting thing and being hunted. Whereas that one was more, it was like you say, it was a buddy cop traveling or trying to figure out who's killing who and blah blah blah. And the alien wasn't bad. I mean, I thought he was, you know, he had his famous catchphrase, "I come in peace." That's what he said the whole time. Which, I mean, if you think about that, if an alien did want to come and take advantage of us, what's the first thing they're going to say? Is "I come in peace," right? And I saw that movie, and like, it did go to theaters. It wasn't a straight to VHS, straight to video release. I saw the trailer for it, and I wanted to see it as soon as it came out. You know, went to the variety store, picked it up off the shelf, and watched it. Like, and it was good. I do recall enjoying it a lot when I was younger. And again, when you like a movie like Predator, and you want to see more like that. Yeah. When a movie like comes out and it's good, but it's not as good, it gives you that fix until the next movie that comes out that's a lot like that. Yeah. And I know it was 4 years later, but there hadn't been much within that time frame of between Predator and I Come in Peace. Right. And at the same time, it's Dolph Lundgren. Like that was He-Man. Yeah. Right. So you like.
Which is a movie that I liked growing up, man. I liked that movie.
Oh, I was a huge He-Man fan like that. So when that movie came out, like I was all jacked for it, and it wasn't He-Man, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that that movie. Like, can you name any other movies like this?
I would say the Hidden.
The Hidden, okay.
The Hidden was a buddy cop movie too, but there was two aliens in it, and it had an alien that had like a little parasite and that parasite would jump from different people, right? And then there was another alien that was like more of a light alien, and it would take over people, and it took over this cop who died in the line of action, right, in the line of duty, and he was hunting this other alien, but he had his old partner, teamed up with him to hunt down the evil bug alien. Right. And then there's a movie that was made in London called Grey Matter that was very much like The Hidden and a lot like this in a sense, except there was no buddy cop. It was simply one alien versus another battling it out in I want to say in a town in Idaho, but it's clearly London, Ontario. But I know the director, and I know his intention was to make it Midwestern America. But when you live in London and you watch these movies, you say, "Hey, look, that's city lights." You know, yeah, that's solid gold, right? So, like, and movies like that where you know you've got a human or a human-like battling an alien that comes to Earth and running around. I mean, it's essentially a slasher film.
Right.
I mean, it's a slasher in the same sense as Relentless, but was a slasher film. Like, it's more about the cops and their investigation to try and catch this killer.
Right.
This one have a sci-fi element. So that's
as close as you think.
Yeah, that's as close as you get. I mean, Predator 2 is more like I Come in Peace than I Come in Peace was like Predator.
Yeah.
But it still fit that alien coming down and hunting.
Yeah. I like the element of how, like, what the alien does, how he, like, injects, like, the drug and then, like, takes the drug.
He's taking
like the
pituitary.
Yeah, and then but he injects something. He injects, like, drug into the person.
Yeah. Well, because it's if I'm not mistaken, he's extracting fear in a sense. Like, it's activating the pituitary gland that gets you afraid, and then he's taking that out, and that's the drug that he's collecting that because he's basically a drug dealer.
Yeah.
And he's harvesting these drugs so that he can go sell them on the Mars black market or whatever.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Speaking of a really good buddy cop film, this is a film that's not exactly a buddy cop film, but it's a cop criminal film where they end up being buddies, and that's John Woo's The Killer from, I believe, 1991.
Yeah.
So this film stars Chow Fat and Danny Lee as the killer and the cop. Basically, you got a story about a killer that's been fucked over, and you got a story about a cop looking for this killer, and, like, his partner gets killed in the mix, and throughout the course of the film, they, kind of have to join forces in a way, and it's really interesting. This is my favorite, Hong Kong action film that I've seen up to this date. Like, I love a lot of the shit that I've seen by John Woo, but this, like, I like this better than Hard Boiled. I think this movie, along with Better Tomorrow and Hard Target, those are, like, some of my favorite John Woo films. But this one,
Broken Arrow,
Broken Arrow, and Face Off.
Hulk.
Yeah, he did Hulk.
Yeah,
did he really? Didn't he do one?
Brokeback Mountain.
Did he really? No, he didn't.
Yeah,
John Woo didn't do Brokeback Mountain. That's a lie.
All right, third drink of the night.
Yeah, that has to be. No way. John Woo didn't do Brokeback Mountain. John Woo did The Killer. All right, so let me say one more thing about The Killer before he finds out. That's got to be false.
All right, hold on.
Did John Woo direct The Killer?
Brokeback Mountain. Oh, sorry, Ang Lee. did.
Ang Lee. That's the one that did the Hulk. Yeah.
I'm so racist.
Oh my god. What a racist prick.
And he did the Hulk. See.
One thing I gotta point out about The Killer is being like a Wu-Tang fan. I think a lot of people, if you like the Wu-Tang, you need to watch this film. A lot of samples have been lifted from this film. One of the interludes on the first album is they're referencing this tape, and it's amazing. So it's one of those films that's so full of action and got such a good story, and like there's no downtime. Like, it's all good. Even the music kicks ass. And as a matter of fact, the chick that's in this, Sally Ye, she was like the Hong Kong equivalent to, like, Britney Spears at the time, apparently. And there's really good behind the scenes stuff on the DVD. This is the tape in my hand, but John Woo delivers a hardcore fucking movie with this one. Like, it says one vicious hitman, one fierce cop, 10,000 bullets. I think they use more than 10,000 bullets, but this is one of those movies where every gun has like 1,000,000 bullets in it. So.
Yeah, and like John Woo is the epitome of gun ballet, right? Like that's what he's known for.
Yeah, that's
Hard Boiled's
yeah.
the one I've seen. I did see. I have seen Killer, but I've seen Hard Boiled more often.
Right.
Just because, like, to me, that shootout in the hospital was just amazing.
Amazing.
The shootout in the tea house.
In the hospital.
Yeah,
too.
in the hospital.
Yeah.
But like that to me was that was John Woo. Like most people, I got introduced to John Woo because of Hard Target.
Oh yeah.
I saw that and I was like, wow, the stylized action of that. And then all of a sudden, John Woo movies started coming up in Jumbo Video and Blockbuster, like
video
all
flicks.
of a sudden, like, wow, these are up there, and you're just like, oh shoot, John Woo, you're watching that. As a kid, I didn't mind subtitles, so like that to me didn't bother me.
Yeah,
I did watch the dubbed version as well, but
yeah,
I grew up watching like La Femme Nikita.
Oh,
the dubbed version of that, and I hated it. And then I watched the other one because when you watch
I gotta finish that movie.
You watch a subtitled version of it, and you get the emotion that the actors. I mean, dubbed has become better.
Yeah.
But it's still the emotional, like the way that they talk, comes through a lot better on the subtitled version. Than if you're watching
the dubbed version, because the dubbed version, you don't get, like you said, you don't get that same emotion, and you don't get, and this is one of those movies where you need, and I think that the dubbed version is amazing in this film. Like I have no problem with the dubbed version.
It takes away. It's like watching the old kung fu movies when they're dubbed. It's like, oh well, this is because the action is fantastical. And in that way, this is more. It's hyper realized.
It's story driven.
Yeah,
it's This is a story driven film, and it requires the actors to deliver these lines in a specific way, and it's good. And when I first watched The Killer, I watched the original version, and that's I was calling him Shrimp Head and all that. My uncle was like, Shrimp Head. He's like, don't they call him like Mickey Mouse or something? But in the Jap or the Hong Kong version, they're known as Ah Zhang and Shrimp Head. But in the American version, they're known as Dumbo and Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, it's
just a little cute thing, I guess you could say. But
as a Western audience, when we were watching these movies, this is a glimpse into Hong Kong at the time. And this is before China took it back. So it was at the time, like before 1997. Anything that was made before that was basically a British movie.
Really,
that was made by Chinese. Because Hong Kong was a British colony at the time.
I did not know that. I knew something like that. But...
And they had an agreement that in 1997, Hong Kong would revert back to China.
Right.
Because they made some type of agreement back in the 1800s.
Right. That like in 100 years or whatever.
Yeah. So they had like 125 year lease on it. And it went back. And there was a lot of tension in Hong Kong at the time. Because basically you're going from a capitalist society to a communist society, and there was a lot of fear and tension, and you can see that in those movies that come before 1997.
Right.
Like there's a hyper, crime is a that was a big driving in the cinema, the storytelling. There was a lot of like uncertainty, and when that comes across in those films, you feel that.
Yeah.
Right? So
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think that if you're looking for really. If you never watch any John Woo films, start with like, and you're not sure like about like if you're like a horror person or something, you don't really give a shit about that kind of stuff. Give it a chance. Watch The Killer. Watch Hard Target with Van Damme. I think Hard Target is a perfect like opener, and then you'll be like, wow, John Woo, like he's a pretty good director. And then you watch like Hard Boiled, The Killer, Better Tomorrow.
Just don't watch Mission Impossible 2.
Don't watch Mission Impossible 2. Apparently, I've never seen it. I might have seen the first Mission Impossible when it came out, but I used to go to the drive-thru like religiously, like
when it comes
or not drive-thru, the drive-in.
Yeah. I went to the drive-thru. It was a
religiously.
Very quick movie.
Yeah, it was very quick.
There's certain tropes that are in John Woo's movies, anyways. Like so, there's always a flying dove, right? There's always a walking through fire element to some degree. There's always a slow turn with the gun. Like the character will spin around with the gun up. And that's
smoking is always a trope.
Yeah, I don't recall if there was smoking in Mission Impossible 2, but all the other tropes, like there was the spinning. There was the gunplay is just amazing. Like if you liked Equilibrium with its gun kata, I think it owes a huge debt to the work of John Woo. And even there's a movie called Replacement Killers that also stars Chow Yun-fat.
Okay.
Because basically.
Oh, I know the cover of that movie. Yeah, it's got like a gun and like a chick.
Yeah, and that was basically after Leon the Professional. They thought another Hitman movie would be great, and John Woo films were starting to become popular because they could see that like, DVD sales and rentals were going up. So they went, all right, let's bring Chow Yun-fat and put him into this movie. It's kind of like Leon the Professional aspect, except without a 12-year-old girl or however old she was.
Right.
And it was good. It had its moments, but it definitely the opening scene was probably the best of that movie. It's basically he's walking through a crowd. It's at a club. There's techno music playing, like the early 90s techno music that everything was going on, and he basically walks up to this guy sitting in the crowd, and all of a sudden he pulls up a gun, boom, blows this guy away, and then you've got a shootout in the club. It was a good movie. Definitely, I wouldn't put it in my top movies, but it was enjoyable and entertaining.
Right.
And then let's go back to our. I think this is the final movie we're gonna end up talking about before we go off on other tangents of other movies. I pulled off your shelf Kung Fu, the pilot, with David Carradine, who plays Kane, a Chinese immigrant to the United States going through the Old West. Obviously played by a white guy. And the reason I pulled that is, one, I mean, Kung Fu was an influential film in the sense that after Green Hornet, when Bruce Lee made martial arts really popular, that was his first big role, and he basically did amazing with that movie, and that brought it to North American audiences. And the TV executives at the time, they had conversations with Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee said, "Hey, I've got this idea for a movie," and he called it Kung Fu, and he wanted to base it in the Old West and have it. People go, "Wow, it's great," and they went, "Yeah, okay, great. We'll cast you, but nobody really knows you, so let's get this David Carradine guy. We'll shave his head. He looks Chinese, not really. He's as white as anybody," and that kind of soured Bruce Lee on North American, TV producers and movie industry, which is why he went back to doing Hong Kong cinema until he did Enter the Dragon, which was his big foray back into North American cinema. Because his movies became big, because people were searching out this martial artist. But the reason I brought Kung Fu outside of all that history was there's a new series on HBO. If Game of Thrones is over, there's a new series for you to get hooked on. It's called Warrior, and it's based on the writings of Bruce Lee. And it's basically a new guy, a Chinese immigrant, comes to San Francisco in I think the 1890s, just after the Civil War type aspect. So a lot of people are, and he's just a kick-ass martial art guy. He knows how to fight. Right. But the Chinese are being, they're being persecuted. They were brought in to America for slave labor. Yeah. Right. Basically, they
build the railroads.
Build the railroads. Build the railroads. The blacks, I believe, had just been emancipated, but Chinese were cheap labor to be brought in, and they were being treated like crap. The Irish were pissed off at the Chinese because they were basically starting to unionize themselves, and they were looking for fair labor wages, and the Chinese come in and to basically undercut them and do the work that the Irish are doing. So you have this battle between the Chinese, the Irish, and then you've got the ruling class in San Francisco at this time. And this new guy comes in, and he's on a quest to find this one girl, and he ends up getting bought because they're called onions. They basically called any Chinese person who comes off the boat is called an onion.
An onion.
Yeah, and he gets bought by this one gang, and he's searching. So he joins in with this gang of Chinese enforcers, and then they run the opium market. And there's another gang that's trying to muscle in and get the opium, but they've got a bit of a truce. He finds out that his girl that he's looking for, which happens to be his sister, is almost like next in line to be the head of the rival gang. But because he's already been beaten in and sworn in into this gang, he can't really jump ship anymore. So he's kind of in the middle of this warring faction that's going on. And the martial arts are amazing. The violence is top notch. There's sex, there's violence, there's swearing, and it's amazing to see a mostly Asian cast. All the characters that you care about are Asian. There's a few Irish actors that are in there as well. There's a lot of Game of Thrones style going on, people behind the scenes machinations going on and trying to play the system. Right. It's really well done. It's like if you're into that type of movie, like Kung Fu and the actual martial arts style, but with actual drama and everything, it's amazing.
And what's the name of that again?
Warrior. I would also recommend Into the Badlands, but that's ending soon. So okay. Into the Badlands is like crazy martial artists, like almost Dragon Ball Z style. Fuck. Yeah, so if you haven't seen that one, definitely check that out. It's got an Asian lead. Right. I think it's starting to become more and more regular that we're starting to see more Asian leads in roles that aren't. I mean, yes, martial arts is considered Asian, but yeah, when So you've got Crazy Rich Asians. You've got this new one coming out with Keanu Reeves, but he's not the lead. He's like some other British. It's like Always Be My Maybe, and it's just an Asian lead to happen to be going through like a dating scenario and things like that. And we're starting to see more Asians getting roles and leads in movies, which is great. I mean, I have absolutely no problem with watching movies that have Asian leads or black leads, or that's just the nature of the world, man. Like you grew up watching black cinema. I grew up watching black cinema. And, to me, it didn't matter who the lead was, so long as that character was compelling and the story made sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always been about the story. Yeah. It's and the thing about characters and the thing about movies, like sometimes movies can make you hate someone, and by the end of the movie you love them. Yeah. With like movies like Clockwork Orange, for example, like where it's like he's doing all this foul stuff, and you're like, wow, what a fucking piece of shit. And then when he's going through his tribulations, you're like, holy fuck, this is like, you feel bad for him. You feel bad for him when he's in that room and he jumps out of the window and all that, and like that's the magic of movies. You know what I mean?
Pitch Black, for example, is a perfect example for that. For me, it was like the Riddick character was just he's a monster. It's all about this group of people dealing with the monsters, and Riddick was just basically a side
prisoner
character,
kind of
side character. Like you just thought, oh, he's going to be the asshole, he's going to fuck everything up for everybody. And then at the end of the movie, he's the hero that you're cheering, right? Like he's the one you're like, holy fuck, he's taking on these monsters and saving people, right?
Oh, so is the first one like where they're on like that deserty planet, right?
Yeah, they're on the desert planet, and when the lights go out, when the sun goes down, these monsters
they got to keep the lights going, basically. Yeah. Have you seen the movie called A Vanishing on 7th Street?
No.
It's got the guy that played Anakin Skywalker in it. Like
that's the one where I've seen something about it where they've got tentacles and.
I don't really remember anything about tentacles. It was one of those movies where it was like the light, like if you're basically, it's like the city's in fucking shambles basically, and everything in shadow, you die in the shadows. Like there's something in the shadows that kills you. Yeah. And there's like bus stops and stuff, so people will be like sitting in a bus stop and then like waiting for like the street lights, and like it's fucking insane. Like it was so well done, and like because I wasn't the biggest fan of those Star Wars films. And I wasn't the biggest fan of like the Anakin Skywalker character, like the actor. I thought his acting wasn't that great. But then when I seen that movie, I was like, holy shit, this guy is pretty fucking good. I like that movie a lot. You should check that one out.
He definitely, I think he got shitted on because, one, he was taking on an iconic character in a role that people are like, who the hell is this guy? Yeah. I have no idea who this is. Mm-hmm. And he took on this role, and the writing was just bad. I mean, do we really need 5 minutes of him talking about sand? Right, like it was just he's a good actor. I just think that he got the wrong role at the wrong time. Yeah, it brought him up to stardom and made everyone aware of who he was, which is great. But he's also now typecast as that character. Right. Like the kid who played Anakin Skywalker in the first one, he could go on and do other movies. Right. Because no one really remembers him, and he's grown up and he's changed so much.
Yeah. Right. You probably wouldn't even recognize that kid at this point. Yeah. Yeah, it's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of like cinema. Usually, is that it's like Sam Jackson has been in, like he was the chameleon. He was the guy before Nick Fury and all that. He was like, you see him in a movie and you're like, who the hell is that? I've seen that guy somewhere, and it's like, oh shit, yeah, he's in this movie. And he plays a different character every time, and now it's Sam Jackson playing Sam Jackson. At this point. Right? Like, there's hardly any movie that you watch him and you're like, oh shit, he's actually absorbed himself into that role.
Yeah, like one of the ones that I can think of where he was like not being a Samuel Jackson was in Juice. He was in Juice, and he's just like this guy, like he's like a guru of the neighborhood that kind of like knows what's going on and stuff.
Die Hard with a Vengeance. I thought he played a different role in that, right?
He was
still Sam Jackson though at that point.
He wasn't really Sam Jackson-y in Jurassic Park.
No, yeah,
he was pretty like fucking mellow.
Like I guess he's been in so many movies that you now recognize the Sam Jackson of his performances, right? So like if you look back, you're like, yeah, that's Sam Jackson. That's typical him. But we weren't overexposed to him. He wasn't in 500 movies a year.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately that happens with a lot of actors when they go through financial troubles and stuff. Like Bruce Willis is in like how many movies, and now we're just like, is Bruce Willis going to act in this one, or is he just standing in there because... And,
like, being an asshole and, like, looking around and being an asshole. I really like Bruce Willis in that movie Cop Out.
Yeah, I like that movie, but...
But I love Tracy Morgan, and I fucking thought that movie...
I thought Cop Out was pretty good, but then, you're watching Kevin Smith talk about, like...
his interaction.
He just hated Bruce Willis because Bruce Willis was... as a director, your job is to bring out the best performances in your actors, but if that actor doesn't respect you, there's no way you're going to get a good performance out of it. And I think that's what Kevin Smith ran up against, because he was awestruck by Bruce Willis by being in the Die Hard 4 or 3, no 4.
Right.
When he was in that movie, he was like, "Oh, great," and they got along. They had a lot in common in that. But I think by the time Cop Out came, it was Bruce was like, "Why the hell am I with this guy? Like this guy was like a B actor in one of my movies, and now he's directing me."
Yeah.
Right. And I think that came across it.
He didn't like that.
Yeah.
Or maybe he didn't appreciate Kevin Smith films or something like that.
Yeah,
because they're not for everyone.
Tusk,
Yeah.
No, Tusk came out after.
Yeah, that was after.
I never saw Mallrats or something.
Yeah, or like Clerks or something. Because Clerks is definitely not for everyone, man.
All right. Clerks is one of my favorite all-time movies. Like,
yeah, but you gotta realize, like,
yeah,
and I love that movie too. But like, I know why people wouldn't like that movie
because it's black and white.
Well, not because it's not because it's black and white, but just because it's like, unless you are totally like a pop culture-y person, it's kind of like, like the whole, like the conversation about like the Death Star and all that, like that is like gold to somebody that is in the know. But if you're not in the know, it's super niche, super obscure.
There wasn't an overall
esoteric.
There wasn't an overall story. There is a story to it, but there wasn't an overall story that it seemed like it was post Pulp Fiction, where everybody wanted to do a movie about conversations.
Yeah. Well, it came out in the same year. It came out the same year, but Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs came before, which was again a very conversational. Yeah.
And I think that's and again, Reservoir Dogs was
pop
conversation, pop culture.
Yeah, exactly. And well done. And like, I think with Tarantino having Reservoir Dogs as his first movie, I think.
True Romance. He did
and True Romance and Natural Born Killers, but I think that was after the fact. But I just think what a stellar like debut film. Like, because everyone, when you think of Tarantino, most people think of Pulp Fiction. I'm one of those people that think of Reservoir Dogs first, because I'd seen Reservoir Dogs first, and I was like, this is insane. And then when I watched Pulp Fiction, it was like a shotgun to the chest. You know what I mean? Because I was like, this is like Reservoir Dogs, but like super just kind of like story. Like it's like in Reservoir Dogs, there's a lot of scenes where they're driving around in cars, and it felt like an entire movie of that, of just driving around in cars and bullshitting. Like the scene in Reservoir Dogs, and they're talking about like, who the fuck is it that's in that show? They're talking about Pam Grier, and he's like, no, not Pam Grier, we're talking about Christy Love, or like all that. It's super like, once again, in the know. It's for people that are in the know, like people that don't even like it prompts people like myself to like have to research stuff in order to understand to get the context better, you know what I mean? Because there's been times where I've watched, like in my later days, or like my, like when I was like really starting to like analyze films better than just like watching them and like that was it, I would say to myself, like, what is it about these movies that does it for me, or whatever the fuck you want to say is like,
why does this movie connect with you?
It's because they're talking about stuff that I like, and even if I don't like it, I look it up and I'm like, wow, I like this for some reason. Like,
got an airplane coming in. Is it Red Dawn or?
Yeah, I don't think it's Red Dawn. I think it's fucking Independence Day.
Red Evening, because it's nighttime out here. But
out here. Right now, I got to point out that we're in Canada, and it's like 9:10, and it's still kind of light out.
This is the time when you film your horror movies, because you can see enough light to see the characters.
Here's a question for you, Kevin. You're working on a script,
which I am. Yes. Yeah.
How's it going?
I am kind of stuck at this point, and in terms of I'm doing basically, it's a creature feature that I'm doing.
Right.
And my imagine a creature feature crossed with Rosemary's Baby.
That's
what I'm going for. But I want to create the atmosphere and the element of Rosemary's Baby in the sense of like you don't know this yet, but having a baby is fucking scary.
Right.
Like it's exhausting. It is so it consumes your life. And so I'm setting up that atmosphere. I basically gotten to a point in the script where I'm like, okay, now where do I take it? I've already got to the creepy ass monster creature part, but where do I take it and how do I make it expand on it? And so this weekend I'm just going to be sitting down and doing that. But that's where I'm going with that script. But
how long? How long of a film are you thinking?
I'm trying to get to 80 minutes. I'd like to make this a feature.
That's good. That's decent. And like, are you thinking about are you thinking about shooting it in in London, or are you thinking about I'm
going to shoot it in London because the script doesn't require extravagant sets.
Right. And I think us being super low budget independent types, it's like you make do with what you got. You know what I mean? So you figure out what you got access to, and then you write obviously you know this, so you write your shit around that, and then
I think I broke that rule already. I pretty much went, oh shit, now I think I've written too much now at this point.
Do you think since now we're out of Fanshawe, we lose our privileges of filming it
at the school?
No, not at the school, at the fucking bar across the street and all that.
No. I think London's
they're pretty open.
Yeah, there's a small film industry that's going on. Most people are university students making their art films and shit like that. I think by doing horror, let's face it, there's a reason why Shockstock was such a success,
which was great,
and because there is a community of horror and exploitation film lovers, and they love to make that shit.
Yeah,
and by doing I'm doing horror, but I'm doing a horror movie that to me isn't necessarily about the creature. It's about the experience of being a new parent, and then what's the creepiest thing that you can have happen.
That's intense,
and that's where I'm going with it. So
I think that when you're writing a script, isolating yourself is the best thing to do. There's a really good documentary movie called American Movie. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, and Misery.
Yeah, the fucked up thing is my buddy Marky sent me Misery a long time ago. I've never watched it yet, but in American Movie, there's a scene where the guy Mark Borshot, I think his name is, he says, this is also in the early 90s, but he takes his camera guy and he shows him where he writes, and basically he takes a fucking hot pot of coffee and a coffee cup and his notepad, and he drives out into this middle of nowhere kind of place where he lives, and he just isolates himself and sits there and writes. And I think that is an admirable thing to do, and that's what one of the things I'm going to miss about the school was it was in the middle of the night. There was many nights I would go and sit in HCAF and just fuck around on my computer and work on scripts and shit. I wrote a lot of shit sitting in that calf, and of course there's libraries and shit you can do that at, and I really wish there was a place where
it wasn't a Starbucks.
That wasn't a Starbucks. I wish we had a little office, a little studio thing where we could we all have. It was we recreate the pit basically, only with computers that work, for fuck's sake.
Well, there was definitely a collaborative approach to it. I would hear stories about Taylor's one movie, his
Stone Cold Killers,
Sift and
Bog.
Sift and Bog. That was a collaborative. Taylor wrote it, directed it, and everything. It was definitely,
which has since been in I think at least two film fests. I think at least one I know for sure.
Yeah, and the thing about that movie was he was stuck at a point where he had written a script and he didn't know where to take it. And through a conversation with me, he got an idea and we bounced it off each other and just made his story come alive at that point. To the point so much that he had to basically scrap everything he had written before and write a new script 2 hours before it was due.
And that's the story of Fanshawe fucking film classes. Everyone hands shit in at the last second because you bang around an idea for a while and then you're like, wait a minute. And one thing I experienced at school was by the end of it all, nobody wanted to direct. Nobody.
I loved it.
But I love directing too. My thing was, like, I wrote a script which was like a love story. Did you read that script? Did I send you that? I'll send you a copy of it. I wrote like a kind of a love story, crimey script.
Yeah.
And I think like I want to get that made, but I said in the class that I didn't want to make it. I wanted to make it after school or like for my capstone. I wasn't able to do that, so I was like, all right, fuck it. And then it didn't get picked, which was fantastic for me because like I had just got a job and I had another class and shit, like Roots of Terrorism. So it was a total shit show. But other than like that, like the job in the other class, I would have wanted to direct, and that's why I went to film school. And every time that we pitched, I got to direct, except that last time around, which was no problem. I was so fucking busy, and there was people that I wanted to work for on a set, but I wasn't able to because they didn't get picked. So I ended up working with Taylor, and we made Stone Cold Killers, which is like the longest project I ever worked on. It's like an 11-minute comedy. Actually, no, the longest project I worked on was my capstone, which was a documentary about myself. But yeah, that's actually not on YouTube because it's not done, because I still have a few more interviews to shoot, but that will be available eventually. But yeah.
I found like directing, like a lot of people, I didn't want to take the role of a director because I didn't want to take anyone else's opportunities away. But when the opportunity was there for, like, I took the TV side, you took the film side, so I was always pushed into a producer, which is almost like a director. And when we're ever doing sports, I'd sit down and like, okay, Kevin's directing, okay, because all you're doing is shouting out which cameras to move to and stuff. But that's when I did the first narrative. I did my pitch and it got picked, and then directing that, and I thought that was great. The only problem I had with it was handing it off to somebody else to edit. That to me, because
which was something that I never followed for any of the films.
Yeah, me neither.
I never did.
Since our grades are final and cannot be changed, I did all of the edits.
I edited every fucking movie that I made. Yeah.
I mean, I when it came to the other edits, because we were the director could do the first edit, put the clips in the order that they needed, but the fine tuning and the final edits, I did all three of them. But for each one, I just had the person who was supposed to do it in the editing bay with me.
Right.
And
I didn't even do that.
I did get input from Ryan, who was my DP. He had some great input into most of that, and Jocelyn Wong, who's now directing a TV show for Rogers TV, or not directing, she's hosting.
Right.
She was the, like, basically our producer, and made sure that everything was running on time and that.
Right.
But I think with that, like, I had such a strong vision for the movie that I did, which is called The Big Gun, and that I didn't want to let it go. This script that I'm writing, I'm more than happy to hand it off to somebody else to do, because I think that one, it's kind of ambitious for me,
right,
to do, and I know I can't do effects, I can't do creature and that aspect, but I can write how people talk and how people interact, especially in something that I'm already familiar with, right?
And that's one thing that I've never really done a lot in my films. I've never really had a lot of dialogue. All my films are sort of like these little next door kind of like little glimpses into shit that I think is cool, like with the video store one, which just we saw at Shock Stock, which was fucking awesome.
Shock Stock
was awesome. Seeing it there was cool too. But like when you that movie was the first movie I ever wrote with dialogue in college, mind you, and it was like I was just trying to like think of like things that these guys would say, and that's what came out. And like one of my things that I want to do, like with the love story that I wrote, there's a lot of dialogue. It's a very close to my heart project, and I'm glad that it has nothing to do with fans. So I don't have to worry about any fucking bullshit. I can do it on my own. I can do it the way I want to do it.
You can have the obligatory tit shot.
I can have obligatory tit shot. It's not like that. Like I think you'll dig the script. It's pretty cool. I want to shoot that. Like once I get a cameraman. Like I'm not a cameraman, but once I get a camera,
a good
man.
Like that,
I want to fucking start getting some shit going, because I'm addicted to like the process of like writing. Like I have did I show you the rough cut of my film Spiral Scratch yet?
I think so, yes. Yeah.
And it's like where my brother kills my dad with the corkscrew.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck! I just gave it away. But anyways, god damn it, I just ruined the fucking movie. But
see, you gotta learn how to avoid your spoilers.
yeah,
stuff,
you see,
right?
I just spoiled this film. Oh, it won't be out for a while anyway because I haven't finished editing it. So beep 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 beep.
Well, okay.
Rewind.
Speaking of scripts, let's talk about the winner of Best Screenplay at Shockstock, the Crystal Shocker Award for Best Screenplay at the 2019 Shockstock. Beelzebub. Beelzebub directed a movie called Clown and Ostra. And that movie, if you have not seen it, I recommend seeing it. I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
I don't think that movie's out yet. I think that was a rough cut.
No.
Remember he said this is a rough cut.
It was a rough cut, but at the same time, I think that's as close as
okay.
we get. He's not changing much. Let's put it that way. That movie was, as he likes to put it, he wanted to go out and make the most offensive movie possible. I can say that he succeeded and he didn't succeed, in the sense that there's nothing gratuitous in terms of violence. There's a lot of gratuitous imagery and exploitation, definitely in that film. I sat through it all. You left halfway through, I think, or not even halfway through.
I couldn't okay, so basically this movie was like a 3-hour long clown porno rape music video, and like every 5 minutes was just like a chick's ass, like slow, like 60 frames per second, slowed down ass shots, and like this guy, like the director is in it, like basically banging like these chicks. It's basically
He was
like
only in the first scene.
it's like this is the way I looked at it. I was like, okay, this guy is like a dude who's like, okay, I got some cash, I want to fucking make a movie, I want to be around a bunch of hot broads, I'm gonna be in it with the broads, and it's like, oh,
well, absolutely, that's what you do. But the reason they won Best Screenplay though is because there was a lot of talk outside of the visual aspect. There's a lot of a conversation being had about people taking offense when offense wasn't meant,
right,
and it wasn't intended, and people getting upset about little things. Like there was not to give too much of a spoiler, but there's one scene where the guy decides that he has a conversation with this woman, and she says something that's not grammatically correct, and he corrects her, and she's like, well, whatever, and then he pulls out a gun and he's pissed off because to him grammar was so important, but it wasn't to her. And his message in this movie was essentially like, stop taking offense to everything. Yeah. Just sit back and enjoy the movie. That being said, he's got scenes in there that are just definitely, you can see that they were intentionally offensive. Like he did them so offensively that you when you see those scenes, you're being like, what the fuck? This is ridiculous. And well, I mean, the whole movie's ridiculous. But the reason I brought up Beelzebub in that movie, outside of screenplays and that, is that he just announced that he's working on a slasher film, and he's looking at what is the core, what makes the slasher film so popular, what makes a slasher film. And I thought that would be an interesting discussion to have between you and I, because like you know Jason, you know Freddy, you know Michael Myers, you know Leatherface, all of those movies. What makes the slasher film one so popular, and at the same time, what makes a slasher film outside of, say, you watch Seven, is that a slasher film? Bone Collector, is that a slasher film? Silence of the Lambs, is that a slasher film?
I think, well, Silence of the Lamb is basically, some people don't even consider that a horror film.
Well, that's the art critics who are like,
yeah,
I don't want to say I like horror.
Yeah,
you do, because it's a horror film.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But like, I think what makes a slasher film is you need a character that's an ultimate threat. You need a group of usually stereotypically it's been like young teenagers, and you need a good setting. So you get movies like Friday the 13th and The Burning and Sleepaway Camp that take place on a campground, and then you got unique ones like say, Intruder, where it takes place inside of a grocery store, and then you got it goes all the way around. Like every setting you can think of, there's pretty much been a horror film or a slash. Like even The Thing, in a way, that's kind of like a slasher film, and that takes place in Antarctica. You got movies like you could kind of look at The Predator as a slasher film.
Yeah, definitely. You can see Predator as being a slasher film because the kills happen one by one.
Yeah, and I think that I wouldn't say Carrie is a slasher film.
No, Carrie was more of a psychological drama in a sense. Like it was, the effects of abuse on a person. And just happen to have supernatural elements to it.
I think that if you want to dissect slasher films, you got to go to the root, and that's basically take a look at your Michael Myers, take a look at your Black Christmas,
Norman Bates,
take a look at your Alice, Sweet Alice, which is a fucking crazy movie. I've talked about that before. Yeah. Basically, I think that you need a character that you know nothing really about, i.e. Michael Myers. It's this kid. We go, what the fuck is going on? That's all we really know. Yeah. You got Jason. You don't really know what the fuck's going on with that. You don't know about any of these characters. With Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you don't know what the fuck is going on. And I think that's the scariest element. Like, famously, Alien has been called a slasher in space, which I agree with that.
Jaws.
Jaws is a slasher in the ocean.
Yeah. I think as you get into the point is that, it's Jaws, the shark has no motivation except to kill.
True.
And I think when you do a movie like, you can get deeper into that if you want, but a course element of a slasher is a character who just wants to kill. For whatever reason he's trying to kill, you don't even have to reveal it too often, but there's something that makes that person want to kill. And I think, like with Jason, he has a motivation. It was all about his mother and stuff like that, and there's a bit of a revenge thing, but he evolved into he just wants to kill. Michael Myers just wants to kill. You can either go with he wants to kill his sister, or he just wants to kill and he just locked onto that woman, or he's a victim of a cult that made him want to kill his family for some reason, which that's if you're going too far into it. Leatherface was that's just a way of life. They've always killed to eat, and that was the thing. And I think outside of the killer, there's also the element of the group of victims.
Yes.
Now, there's some movies where you start rooting, like the later installments of a lot of these horror franchises, where the victims aren't even central to the story, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't even care about them. They're so disliked that you actually root for them to die.
Yeah.
And whereas with Halloween, you cared about Laurie Strode. That you had a reason to not want her to die. Yeah. And you didn't really hate the other kids because they were typical teenagers.
Right.
Right. And I think that's why Halloween still stands out as being scary, is because you cared about these characters. These characters had, and it's not a slasher for the sake of slasher like the later installments of Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah. Or like if you take a look at the original Halloween and put it against the remake of Halloween from 2008, you get such a different film. Yeah. And maybe it's because I was really young when I seen Halloween. I don't think that the remake, even though it's way more graphic, is nearly as effective.
No, yeah.
Because like that, the original one had my cousin and myself. We were both up for weeks. We couldn't fucking sleep. I had nightmares. I used to live in an apartment building on the second floor, and I had nightmares about looking out the window and seeing, not Michael Myers, but just seeing like a masked guy like looking up at my window and being like, that is fucked. My cousin, the thing that got him was the music. And that's what music was amazing. Like if that music, like let's say you take that music and put it over like wedding footage, it might work. It could fucking work, but for this case, it works. Apparently, like he wrote it like in like a couple of days. Like a lot of his scores, I've heard he just like kind of banged out. But it's so effective. It's so creepy. You got slasher films like, coming out of the yin yang in that time. Like Maniac was a great slasher from like 1980 with Joe Spinell. You had,
but again, that was a different type of,
a very different psychological
but not necessarily scary. Like it didn't make you afraid. It made you wince because of how graphic the violence
but
was.
I think since you were on the ride with that guy from the very beginning of the film, you don't get that same sense. Like that's where it's different from regular slashers, where it's like it starts off with you killing with this guy. It doesn't like start off with like an innocent person being killed, like so many famous slashers have done. Like one of the most famous slashers of all time, like to me it's like not even on the top 5 or top 10, but it's definitely up there, and that's Scream. Scream does this thing that it kind of takes from Psycho, where it starts off, you got a very famous actress at the time with Drew Barrymore, parodied in Scary Movie by Cameron
Diaz.
Carmen Electra.
Carmen Electra, yeah.
And you think it's going to be about this chick, and then boom, she's dead, and then the film starts. And I think Scream is one of those movies that now with it being like 20 years old, over 20 years old. I remember when that movie came out. Like that, I think that movie came out in '96. I was 4 years old, and I knew about that movie when it was coming out because everyone in my family loved horror films. Like my fucking cousin, who was like a couple years older than me. He's only like 2 or 3 years older than me, but his mom, like he was obsessed with horror. I was obsessed with horror, and that's why I'm this way now, because of nights like that where we stayed up all night watching. I still have the taped copy of Halloween 1 and 2, and I can tell you how many times like we had to you scare yourself, but at the same time you're addicted, and it's weird. I think the slasher genre is one of the most unique subgenres in horror because you get all these standout characters. Like you take a slasher movie like Pieces, where there is a killer, you don't really see him that often, and that's really the end of it. When you think of Pieces, you just think of like that principal guy being the killer. You don't think of like Freddy Krueger. You don't think of Jason Voorhees, or Pinhead, or fucking Leprechaun.
They didn't create an iconic killer, and I think.
Yeah, exactly, and it also
even Sleepaway Camp.
No sequels either doesn't really help either. But Sleepaway Camp doesn't really have a.
It has sequels, but not following with the same character. At least I don't recall, because that movie scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Yeah, Sleepaway. But okay, so my thing with Sleepaway Camp, and I never saw that movie when I was a kid, and when I did see it, I've seen like a really badly edited version of it, and I was like,
Pureflix version.
I don't know, man. I'll show you. It's like it was so like cut down. Like even there was like no screams in the film.
Yeah, a lot of the kills happen off.
No, but like you could hear a scream that was like someone like edited down. Like it was like they just took the level and put it down. Like one thing I gotta mention, since we're on the topic of slashers and since we're on the topic of Sleepaway Camp, we kind of had like a cool opportunity where we filmed a panel at Shockstock with Felissa Rose, Kelly Maroney, I think, and then what was his name? Sleazy P.
Yeah, Sleazy P.
Sleazy P. Martini, who is like, what is he?
He's the manager for Gwar, and he's a character, obviously, but and the person who plays him is the guy who helped shape the look of Gwar, part of a collective that made all the monsters and that. He's a very, very interesting guy to talk to outside of Sleazy P. Martini. But yeah, talking about that was like watching that and watching, these are people who have been iconic characters, and you can tell that they love the fans, because like Felissa Rose got hammered on the first night of Shockstock and was singing karaoke, and it was just Howard David Thornton,
the Terrifier
who plays Art the Clown in the Terrifier. He was there. Super nice guy, like amazing person to talk to, and I hope he gets the role of the Joker, because his Joker impression during his panel was amazing. But again, these are people who love the genre, and you can tell that comes across. And I think Felissa Rose loves the genre so much because it gave her so much,
right?
Especially at a young age.
Yeah.
And that's why she's gone back to doing the horror and doing the horror market and conventions and that.
Well, I think she's embracing it.
Yeah, she's totally embraced it, and I think that's that comes across as somebody who, like Silence of the Lambs. If you had any of those actors in that movie doing a convention for Silence of the Lambs after so many years, they would not like it. It's like, and that doesn't come across like that you can tell that they're not that they weren't into it for the love of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think that also comes into is when you make a horror movie, if you have love for the source material and love for the genre and what came before, like for example, It Follows.
Yeah.
Was, I consider that it's also a supernatural thriller, but it's also a slasher because there's some stalking involved. It's a one-on-one killing thing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you care about the characters. They're not all jerks. They're not all the people that like, oh, this one's gonna get killed because they're a jerk. Each character has a redeeming quality, and when they die, you care about it, right? And that made the movie terrifying in and of the concept itself. And I think what happens with the slasher genre, which is why it died out in the late 80s in the sense that it wasn't as popular anymore, was because you didn't care about the characters. All you cared about was that main monster and seeing what that monster does.
Yeah.
Right? And then Scream brought it back because the characters were central to the story. In fact, if you didn't care about the characters, you didn't care about the movie at all. It was this typical slasher. And it played up on the tropes as well. Like it
definitely.
It laid out all the tropes that came before.
It was super meta. Like they know, like they talk about the rules in the film. One of my favorite scenes in Scream is when he lists the rules, like what you don't do. He's like, never say I'll be right back. And then the guy's like, you want a beer? Yeah. He's like, sure, I'll be right back. And like it's one of those movies that like when I was a kid, I watched it and I was like, this is Scream and like this is cool and I like this, but it wasn't like, I didn't hold it on the same level as like, the Nightmare on Elm Streets and all that kind of stuff because of the lack of the supernatural character.
Yeah.
But with that being said, it's still and like just because a character, like a movie that doesn't have a supernatural character, it can still be a fucking slasher. Like piece, like we just talked about a bunch.
Part 5,
which I love. Which I love. Like there's lots of memorable moments in part 5, man. Fucking big, like, fucking nerdy guy, and he's like, hey, girls. And he's like,
I like that movie.
Can I help with your laundry? I'm really very good at this.
I thought that part 5 was a precursor to Scream because it was, like, one, you assume that it's Jason, but then you find out that it's not Jason. Right? That it's just a regular guy who's just pissed off. And it that kind of tied into like what Scream was. Like you didn't know who the killer was, and that became a central theme throughout.
That's true, but the thing with okay, so we just talked about Scream. What did you just reference? The movie you referenced with Scream there?
Friday the 13th Part 5.
Okay, so the thing with Friday the 13th Part 5 is they don't really give you any time to really think that that's who the killer is. Like you don't really know that. It
comes out of nowhere.
Like you see the character twice, I think. Like you see, and another great line that me and my brother and my cousin we were always quoting. The paramedic is looking down at his son who's all chopped up, and then all the kids are screaming and stuff, and the other paramedic looks down, pops a piece of gum, and goes pussies, and then he's like, "Come on, Roy. Come get your hands dirty." And like it's his kid laying there on the ground, and like he doesn't acknowledge it or anything like that, and then all of a sudden he just decides to kill all these kids that had nothing to do with it. But that's like how all these movies go. Like with Jason Voorhees, like none of these people had anything to do, like other than part 1, none of those people had anything to do with
even in part 1 they didn't have anything. It was just the mother was just upset that at pretty much any counselor.
Yeah, it was like if you were a it's like she was racist against camp counselors, folks.
Counselor phobia, and I think that's like if Beelzebub is listening, that I think he said he's surrounding himself with people who know the slasher genre down in Texas, and he's going to be putting it together. But I think that's the key to it. Is one, you do have to have a memorable killer.
Yeah,
the killer has to stand out, whether it's by look or by method that they kill. And to me, I think you need to have a cast of victims that are established and you care about.
Right.
like there's a new movie that just came. Well, not new movie. It's a recent movie called You Might Be the Killer.
Right.
That was again, it was a deconstruction of the tropes, but even then, you still cared about the characters.
Right.
And the killer was very unique in the sense that, one, you find out exactly who the killer is right from the beginning.
Right.
And then it's just them dealing with the fact that they are the killer.
Right.
It's well done, and it's got to have gore. That's
Definitely.
that's kind of a given, which is where I think even Scream didn't have the gore.
No.
And that was the beginning of the PG-13.
Well, the beginning with Drew Barrymore and like her guts ripped open, but like that's like a split-second shot. Yeah. You don't get any like real, kind of.
There's no head being twisted.
No, there's no memorable kills other than that one hanging in the tree. Like, honestly, there's another kill where, my problem is I have Scary Movie and Scream like slurpeed into my head. So like, I always see Shorty getting shot like coming up that hallway, and he's like, what's going on? And then he gets shot, and then he's smoking weed from his lung.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, okay, no, I gotta take myself away from that. It's Jamie Kennedy, and like, he's a movie fan. Jamie Kennedy's playing like one of us, basically. You know what I mean? Like a person that understands horror and like shows it, and like is almost like so willing to talk about it and like not care. He's unapologetic if people don't understand it. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's like constantly referencing films. And
to me, I think that he and this is not to be prejudiced against anyone who has autism, but I think he would be considered somebody on the spectrum because he kept saying things that were inappropriate.
Right.
Like he had a socially awkward way about him, right?
Yeah.
But he was still part of the group and still very likable, which is...
Despite him being like the nerdy part of the group, like they still went and talked to him at the video store, even though they were looking for information. But like all that kind of stuff, like he's still a central part of the story. And even in the sequel, like he plays a big role. And I think in the third one, he makes an appearance like through videotape.
Yeah.
Like they show him like...
Because that became part of the trope of it, like
that became a trope on its own.
Yeah.
That like him leaving that tape behind became a thing. I think.
Well,
it seems very familiar to me.
I can't recall, but I think there was only 4.
Scream?
Yeah, there was only 4 screens.
Yeah, there was 4 screens. Yeah, so there was 1, 2, 3, and then that 4th one with the fucking like in 2011
where they tied it all back, and it was like
it was not good at all.
Although Jay and Silent Bob were awesome in it.
That was the third one, though, wasn't it?
Was it the third one?
Yeah, they were in the third one for like a minute. Like they were...
Yeah, like a split second.
Yeah. Like, the thing...
But again, that's the law of diminishing returns with these horror franchises. If you don't have a passion for it and you're just doing it for a cash grab, which is what ended up happening with the Scream franchise, you're not going to get...
Like, and I think that happens with everything because you get movies like Nightmare on Elm Street, written and directed by Wes Craven. You get fucking Halloween, written and directed by John Carpenter. You get Texas Chainsaw Massacre, written and directed. I mean, they all, like Kim Henkel and Deborah... Kim Henkel and Tobe Hooper did Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Deborah something and John Carpenter wrote Halloween. I can't believe I can't remember that woman's name, but she recently... Or not recently, but she passed away... No, not Messing. Check it up. We're going to have to dip again here, but Deborah Hill, that's it.
Yeah.
So Deborah Hill.
That's not a drink.
Okay, that doesn't count. That one doesn't count as a drink. So basically, you get these movies, the excuse me, how the fuck can I say this? Like the first of the series, the first of the franchises are almost all written and directed by the same guy. Like they hold both titles, and like I think Stuart Gordon wrote and directed Reanimator, and like I know Joe Spinell had a lot to do with Maniac, and like a lot of Joe Spinell didn't direct Maniac, but like a lot of these and like Roman Polanski wrote fucking Rosemary's Baby. I'm pretty sure.
No, it was based on a book.
Was it? Okay.
But he directed and added certain elements to it, but
right. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like it's like
even the first franchise is usually a passion project because you have to fight to get that film made.
Yeah, Clive Barker with Hellraiser.
Yeah,
like
he fought like he he fought to get that made.
Yeah, and like you look at these, and like that's why those ones are so good, because it's like I wrote this. That's why I think like I don't think anyone else could have directed Nightmare on Elm Street, but Wes Craven, because Wes Craven is one of those directors. You look at his track record; he's got movies like Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes, Serpent in the Rainbow, Swamp Thing. You know, a really fucking fantastic one that I'm blanking on the name. Don't know. That movie where it's recent. It was like I think his last film. And it was about like the 7 kids that were all born on the same day when this like serial killer was murdered. Either way, that was a really good one. I think he might have wrote that as well. But like these are just fantastic director writers that like auteurs basically. You know what I mean? Like they are all around it. Like a Kevin Smith kind of guy. Like I know for the longest time I was kind of like not anti Kevin Smith, but like I felt I didn't want people to think that I'm only into this stuff, because I understood Clerks, I understood Clerks 2 and all that kind of stuff. That movie was called My Soul to Take, by the way. That was a drink.
Let's not forget Shocker.
Yeah, man.
Music of the Heart.
Here's what you got to do. Look up Dean Cundy. So Dean Cundy is the cinematographer who worked with John Carpenter, but he had something to do with Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, and Stuart Gordon had something to do with that as well. Look that up real fast.
Dean Cundy. I met him when he was in London. That was awesome. So he did Thing. He was the cinematographer for Halloween, Thing, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, Escape from New York, The Fog, Romancing the Stone, Death Becomes Her, Hook, Halloween 3.
Okay, there it is right there. Click that one right there.
Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves.
Click that. Okay, who directed that? I think Stuart Gordon directed that.
Let's see here. I really wish that they'd... Cinematographer... directorial debut of cinematographer Dean Cundy.
So, Dean Cundy's first movie... Is Stuart Gordon have something to do with that film, though?
He based on characters by Stuart Gordon, because it's a sequel, right?
Okay. So I didn't know that Stuart Gordon.
It's the third in a series of.
So Stuart Gordon had something to do with the first one.
Yeah, Honey, We Shrunk the Kids.
Fuck, I did not know that.
Honey,
Okay,
I Shrunk the Kids.
I just thought that it was like these two horror masters. You got fucking Stuart Gordon, who did Reanimator, From Beyond. He did. I think he did Dagon. I think he had something to do with one of those Return of the Living Dead films, like I think Part 3 maybe. Maybe that was Brian Usna. But such a crazy mind, and then with Dean Cundy, who created a lot of these fucking shots that we love.
Stuart Gordon is the writer of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Okay, Stuart Gordon wrote that. I did not know that.
But he wrote it, so that's you think like that's the mind of this person that you're describing. Right?
It's but like taking those two guys and then making that movie.
Yeah,
it's just like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck happened there? Like, is that a fall from grace? Do you think, or do you think that's just like a?
Like let's look at the filmography of Dean Cundy. Like they are almost all of the most memorable films of the 80s, right?
Right.
Almost all. Like
in terms of horror.
Not even just in terms of horror. Like
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future, Jurassic Park. What was the other one? Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Right. All of those films have a unique and great look that you can go, wow, that's an 80s movie,
right?
And they didn't have to be within the genre. Like the reason a lot of people do get into horror first is because horror is easy to make. It's easy to scare people, and you don't have to have a big actor. You don't have to have a giant set. You can do a small enclosed space horror movie. Look at Saw, for example.
Yeah, and like look at fucking Dave Barrett's script. I forget the name of it. I don't think it was Redeemer, but it was the script that he pitched in the last term. But he pitched this script that was. I'm not saying it was a Saw ripoff, but I'm saying it had like it was going to be filmed in one room, and it was going to be gory, and it was going to be. I wanted to work on it, but it didn't get picked, which was a fucking. I couldn't fucking believe that, but he ended up getting to work on something
I think
he's happy with.
Everybody has written a script about a single person in a room or one or two characters in a room. I have a script that I did that took place in a single room. It wasn't gory. I definitely couldn't shoot it while I was in school because they had the rule that everyone broke that I didn't, which was no guns allowed.
I broke that rule okay, so since we're out of school now, I can tell this fucking story, and I don't have to feel bad about it. So I made Afro Death, and I wrote that during the strike, because we had a strike when our first like fucking 4 weeks in, then we had a 5-week strike, and it sucked. But I wrote this fucking script about, it's nothing really much, right? It's like a guy comes in and kills some fuckers, but I'm okay, how are we gonna do this? I shoot the fucking thing. We come back. We don't... No, okay, so this is what happened.
For your action sequence.
Yeah, my action sequence. So, me and Dave, we shot his action sequence called No Use for a Grave.
Or Dig Two Graves.
No, it was called No Use for a Grave.
Oh, okay.
And then that was a week before school came back. And then the week school came back, I was to shoot mine on that weekend. And then when we came back, we learned that the action sequence was taken off the fucking syllabus or whatever. And I was like, fuck. I was like, well, I'm about to shoot mine. Dave was like, I already shot mine. And then we got it basically so we could get 5% for it.
Yeah.
So we took that. But I made this fucking movie that involved a gun. And I showed it to certain professors. And some of them were like, this is cool. Some of them were like, whoa, stop it immediately. And some of them were too busy to play. They were too busy playing a fucking golf game on their phone while I was trying to show them my short film. Yeah. That's not a lie. I'm not going to say who it was, but motherfucker, man, I was pissed at that. And then the whole thing was I couldn't show that. They wouldn't let me screen it and all this shit. And I was like, well, what the fuck? I was like, well, I made this. I want people to see it. And then the next endeavor I made was The Locker, which didn't have any gun. And then I didn't have another gun until Purple Demon. And then in the first...
But because you were in the film stream, they didn't have the same restrictions. I think because we were doing television,
right,
there was restrictions on that.
Right.
And then,
no, but get this. Romy said in the first week of year one, he said, no guns, period. And I said... No, and I said something. This is like my first week.
What if
this
it's
is like
just
the first
one gun?
That's what I said to Romy. I'm like, so what if we just like? And he's like, no guns, period. Said it again. I'm like, fuck. And then I write a script with multiple guns, and he's like, yeah, make that.
Yeah, I don't think they understood that. Like, I mean, yeah, you can be creative and avoid guns, but sometimes a gun is essential to the plot.
I wanted with that movie. I wanted like the gun. I needed the gun because the gun was the driving force. I wanted it to be like,
it was the inciting incident.
Yeah, like the gun is like the oh shit, like something is about to happen. The fact that like, actually, my buddy, he lent me those guns. I got to give them back to him.
Note to self.
Actually, I looked at them this morning. I looked in my closet there. They were sitting there. My buddy Mike's probably like, I'm gonna fucking kick his ass, but.
So, future Ricky, if you're watching this, remember that you need to give back those guns.
Yeah, give back those guns. But even, like Romy said, he was like, if you're going to make a film and you want guns, you need to have, like, a gun wrangler. My gun wrangler was drunk as a skunk and in the film. My dad, basically. I just want to talk about, since we're on the topics of, like, these films, I want to talk about one film that I made that I'm, like, probably the most proud of. And that's the Vinyl documentary. The Vinyl documentary is, like, was my first thing I ever made that wasn't for myself.
Yeah.
It was for like it was for my dad basically, and he's in it. And he gets to tell like an emotional story. Like he loves that. He loves watching it. But the thing I want to point out about that is that thing gets like easily like 50 views a day. It's almost at 3,000 views, and I think that that's cool because like I want that shit to be seen. I want all this shit to get out. It's not that I want to get like fucking famous. I just want people to watch this shit. I want feedback.
On Record Store Day, do a screener at Odyssey.
I would love to do that. Actually, I shot a promo for Odyssey.
Yeah.
I gotta give him the fucking the thing. The only thing is, not being able to use the gear at school has really put a fucking like depressing state of mind to me because like before school was over, I was renting shit. I had stuff constantly.
Oh yeah.
Like even I took stuff out and didn't use it and just had it in my house and then because I was like I might want to film something. Like one thing I regret, right over on Rectory and Hamilton Road there's that fucking Buddhist temple with like the statues out front. I wanted to film something out front. I wanted to do an Afro Death 2 thing that was like John Wicky, where he was like in a suit, but he like came out of there, and like I wanted to have cool shots of like a blue gel on one side, a red gel on the other on like the statues, and make it all crazy. But that still can be done. It just not with the school equipment. I'm not going to be able to use the D7200 with the 28 to 300 fucking lens, and you know.
Yeah, no, I think that is part of the issue is getting the equipment.
Now we're like little cinema rats that are just like scavenging around looking for equipment.
That's the nature of it, right? But
yeah.
I mean, I was talking back to Bluntzillavideo, and I was talking with him because I said there was noticeable quality differences between shots.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I mean, I learned about high def video
right
after like he said like it was this other guy told me about how to shoot in 1080.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Because he was still shooting on a camera that shot 720, and
Jesus,
he finally learned. And I mentioned to him like the movie is an acquired taste, but he had some cinematic shots in there that were really
like naked chicks' asses and stuff.
Not just that, but
like, they were the camera movements were good.
Yeah,
I will say this, like the stuff that looked like kind of like like a
music video,
like music. The stuff that looked music video-y looked like a pretty decent music video. You know what I mean? Like I think that his music video segments to me looked better than his actual like dialogue parts. Like all the stuff with the dialogue was totally like fucking just like really jokey, and the actors were like totally like not that great. And it was like that's why the only reason I left is because I knew it was gonna be like not multiple hours, but I knew it was gonna be long because I heard about Bluntzillavideo before, and I heard that
his movie 4 hours.
No, but I heard his movie Dick Shark was like 3 hours long or some shit. Yeah. But I was just like, fuck, do I really want to like sit here this whole time? And like the thing about Shock Stock is like the chairs that you have at Shock Stock are like the shittiest little fucking chairs of all time.
They're conference room chairs that the hotel provides.
Yeah, it's not, I think if Shock Stock had the means, there'd be like nothing but like greasy couches with like dirty coffee tables with ashtrays, which would be in the in order. Like that's Shock Stock to me. Like when I think of Shock Stock, like I just think of like a bunch of people that love horror and probably smoke dope and like to talk about horror, like
get drunk, talk about horror.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Like we got to film Joe Bob Briggs do a screening. Like he did like a 20-minute opener, and then he did we watched The Freakmaker, which is also known as The Mutations.
Yes.
And on 16mm. But like the fact that like this guy, like he had it all written down or whatever, but like all of his information, like he had us all fucking riveted to him, you know what I mean? Like even if you didn't know who he was, when you hear somebody talk passionate about something they love, you can totally tell. And that was a perfect example. Like people like not Bluntzillavideo, well, people probably like Bluntzillavideo, but people like Joe Bob and people like I'm trying to think of like other like horror influencers. I can't really think of any other than like
that were there. I mean,
like or like in general, like I'm trying to think like, do you know any other like really good horror other than like
Elvira?
Oh fuck! How the fuck could I forget about Elvira?
The Crypt Maker, or the Crypt Keeper?
Yeah, the Crypt Keeper. Sure enough, yeah.
Superhost was also a horror influencer.
I guess Clarence Williams in Tales from the Hood.
Yeah.
Is that his name, Clarence Williams?
Yeah. He passed away too.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people that like Eli Roth is with his Masters of Horror, or not Masters of Horror. That's a different thing. The History of Horror. That's it was an AMC show. It's now on Shudder.
Right.
And I think that's another thing too about the genre itself of horror and exploitation. We now have a full-on Netflix dedicated streaming service for these types of movies, right? Like we're talking like
we're in a good place for horror right now.
We're in the place that comic book nerds were in, and I count myself among them, were when Iron Man got made. We were like, holy shit, they made an Iron Man movie.
Like, so you okay, so let's talk comics for a second. Like, you being a comic book fan and being like a movie fan with more years in the game than me, like, getting to see like certain things come out and not being like seeing it like years after it's been out and stuff like that. Like, so you're a kid, you see all these things. What's one of the standout? I might have asked you this before, but name one of your standout films, one horror, one non-horror that made you want to be like that turned you into a quote unquote cinephile.
In terms of horror, that's the tricky part, because I grew up watching horror, so it's like there was an element of, there was a time where I was definitely afraid of horror and I could not watch it at all. Fright Night probably would be the one that like it allowed me to overcome that fear of horror, because horror, there was horror and then there was horror. Like there's Maniac and then there's Friday the 13th.
Yes.
Right? And back in the day, the covers of these VHS things that told you if that was a movie that was, you were gonna be fucked up for life for watching, right?
That's true.
Fright Night, it was on. So back in the day, they had First Choice Super Channel, and it had basically you could get the channel, but it was always scrambled. So you needed a box that would unscramble it so you could watch it.
A cheater
right?
box.
But you could still hear the movie.
Right.
You just couldn't see it, right? It would be all blurry and stuff.
Yeah.
I flipped to that channel when Fright Night was on. I didn't have the box to see it.
Right.
And all I could hear was the noises and shit. And I think I mentioned this the last one.
Right.
And that freaked me out. Because I didn't see it. All I heard was like there's like vampires and blood and there's screams and there's werewolves, and I was like, holy shit, this is not a movie for me. Turn it off. I think I was 8 at the time, right?
Right.
Then I watched it again and I got over it because I was like, oh, wait a second. Okay, I see how they did that. Okay, and I started getting into how they made the horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I got back into horror, and I just fell in love with them, and I watched a whole slew of them, and then I stopped watching them again, just because they were getting repetitive at the time, right? This was like late 80s, early 90s, until Scream. And then Scream brought me back into horror again. Right. And then but I had grown up watching, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Gargoyles,
the Goosebumps.
All the Goosebumps monsters. Well, not Goosebumps. Goosebumps was that to me. That was like, oh, this is just kid.
That was more kiddie stuff?
Yeah.
For you? Yeah.
But like Hellraiser.
What about the Tales from the Crypt TV show?
Yeah, I watched that because it was one of those shows that was on later, so it was more adult in terms of the storytelling. Right. And that's so I watched all of those. So to me, like Gargoyles, not the TV show, the cartoon, but there was a show, right? A TV movie called Gargoyles. That was like the first one I watched, right? That I can distinctly recall watching. And then obviously like Friday the 13th was always on WUAB Cleveland TV. It was the censored version, but
which channel was that?
Channel 43, I think. Okay. So like if you were in London here, you could get when it was over the air, you could get the Cleveland station. Right. So that's what we were watching all the time, and they always had a horror movie. Every Saturday night was a horror movie, right? So we were always watching something, and it was always censored because I'm a kid, but at the same time, it's the creepy elements of it, right? Right. And then in terms of comic books, like a comic book movie, Swamp Thing was, to me, that was the first one I saw. So again, it's almost back to a horror element. And then, of course, you watch, Superman came out at the same time. And then you almost had to accept what they gave you. So you watched the Hulk TV show. That was as close as we were ever going to get to seeing the Hulk, because it's humanly impossible to do something like that. And then, there was a Spider-Man live-action show, and you're like, wow, that's as close as we're going to get. It's a piece of crap. Captain America had a TV pilot. Piece of crap. This is as close as we're ever going to get. And then Batman 1989 comes out, and you're like, holy shit, this is Batman, right? And then, then that's all there was Batman, right?
Do you think that Batman thing had a lot to do? Like, I know it was Tim Burton, and I know it wasn't written by Frank Miller, but that is Frank Miller's Batman universe.
To a degree, yeah. No,
not his universe, but like because he never wrote a story about like a younger Batman, I don't think.
He
but
did.
like
he wrote Batman Year One.
Year One, that's right. But like, which Year One is fucking awesome. But I think Dark Knight Returns. When I first read that, I was like, so there was a spell. Like I'd always been into comics, but I wasn't always into reading comics. I was more into the collecting aspect. But when I started to actually sit down and find out of these lists of like, you know, the top best comics, right? And like Dark Knight Returns was always on there, this guy Frank Miller. So I was like, all right, fuck it, let me check this out. I read it and I was like, this is fantastic, like this is awesome. And then immediately after I read Year One, I read 2 of his Daredevil works that he did with John Romita Jr. and the other one was Dave Mazzucchelli.
Oh, so you didn't read the original Frank Miller,
The Man Without Fear, like
no, the original series,
the run that he did.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
Oh,
I did no. I heard it's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a really good documentary on Frank Miller's Daredevil on YouTube. But like reading Sin City, like I was talking about this with my uncle tonight.
Yeah.
We were talking about Sin City and how I haven't watched the film, and I said, well, no, because when I read those Sin City books, I was like, I thought Frank Miller was like God at that time, and when I read those, I was like, this is so up my alley. And the movie was already out at that point, but I said, this is so up my alley, and I've made these voices for these characters in my head. I don't want to put anyone else's voice to these characters. Like when I read Clockwork Orange, I read it with fucking Malcolm McDowell's voice, which is a fantastic book. You should totally read that out there. The Shining, same thing. I'm thinking of fucking Jack Nicholson. Same thing with It. I'm thinking of all those characters. I haven't finished It yet, mind you, but it's a problem that I have sometimes with reading, and I don't, because I used to read a lot more, and now I don't. Well, because of school, I like stopped reading altogether, basically.
Yeah, I get that. I haven't read an actual novel in quite some time, like a couple of years.
This is totally off topic, but one thing we should do together, we should go to a fucking acting class, because I was talking to Romy, right? Yeah. And Romy said, I mentioned it to Romy, I said, what do you think about going to take an acting class, to help with directing? He says, that's an amazing idea. He said, like, nothing but positive shit will come from going to an acting class. Yeah. So I think if we went to an acting class and like took a look at like from their point of view, I think we're gonna get a better sense at direction, because like for the most part I've directed people that I know. Yeah. You know what I mean? I've never really directed anyone I don't know, and I need to know how to interact with people that I'm not like smoking weed with awkward, and like I don't want to be like, I don't think I would be socially awkward with people. I just think I would be like I just want to know acting talk.
Yeah, because the problem with acting is that there's multiple schools of acting.
Right.
So there's stage acting, where stage acting you're really just trying to convey emotions from a distance. Right. Right. And then when you get into movies, your emotion is more subtle, because the camera's closer. Right. So there's a different style of acting in that sense, and it's really about trying to get the actor into the right headspace for the character and the scene that they're doing at that point. Right. And how do you convey that information so that they actually get it? So, like, for example, you're trying to get somebody to cry, and it's like, well, what's the most important thing to you? Oh, okay, it's my kids. Okay. Well,
what if your kids got fucking raped and fucking murdered? You know what I mean? Then they're gonna. You know what I mean?
Are you then evoking the anger, the vengeance, or are you evoking the sadness? Like, what if your kid got cancer and you found out like she's got 2 months to live?
And it's like, if you
got nothing you can do about it. Like, there's nobody to blame. There's nothing to do.
That, like, all you can do is like play a person that's dedicated to their kid and like would do anything for their kid. And then like, let's say like all of a sudden like the bills are fucking adding up, and like the father has to like go do something, and like he's got to go do this crime, but in the back of his head he knows it's wrong, but he sees his kid like before anything. He sees his kid before he sees the victim of his crime.
And for the most part, like that's what an actor would do. They would read the script entirely, except for in the Marvel movies where they try and avoid the spoilers. But the idea of getting in an actor getting inside the character's head, and that comes down to the screenwriting in terms of how you describe the character, how you describe the mannerisms to a degree. I mean, you leave that mostly up to a director at that point, but if as a screenwriter you want to make sure that the dialogue is unique enough that each character has a different way of talking, right? And that's where Tarantino was just genius at that point.
Right.
It's almost each one had a different style and different way of talking. And then the scene that you set up, and you have to be able to visualize that. And a good actor would be able to do that and get inside that character's head.
I think a good thing to point out, a good example of that is, so take the scene in Pulp Fiction, using a Tarantino film. Take the scene in Pulp Fiction where Bruce Willis wakes up and he looks for his watch. And it's like, we already know the importance of this watch. So Tarantino probably said to this guy, he's like, okay, so you know that this watch is like impossible to replace, right? Yeah. You can't go to your house because someone's going to fucking kill you there probably. She forgot the watch. She thought she got it. How are you going to act? You can't beat her, you know what I mean? Yeah. Or like, you know, without beating her and all that kind of stuff. And I think how he does it, like, I think Bruce Willis's performance in that is like one of like the lesser thought of when it comes to Pulp Fiction, because it's so kind of like, you know, comparing that to like the shit with Sam Jackson.
It wasn't too much different than what a character he'd already played.
Yeah, exactly. But he's put in this situation that is so like, so crazy, and like you feel for him the whole time, and it's, yeah. And then all of a sudden, like, you get this crazy change of heart where he saves his own ass. You know what I mean? He saves his own ass and by like
and literally saves the ass.
Okay, exactly. Saves his own ass twice. And he doesn't save the ass, but he saves like.
It could have been wrecked even more. You don't know the size of the other guys.
Yeah, like the thing about Marcellus Wallace, and like the reason why I like the first time I saw Pulp Fiction was actually on a stolen copy of Pulp Fiction from a questionable incident one night, and
that sounds like a great title.
It was
questionable incident.
A questionable incidents that led to like a giant bag of stolen condoms, stolen copy of Pulp Fiction, stolen copy of Kids.
See, now you need to write that story.
Yeah, and there was something
How did that
else.
happen?
How did it happen? It happened that we were looking for a place to get high. My buddy, I'm not going to say any names, and this is like fucking over 10 years ago, so I don't give a shit.
He's got 5 friends, you figured out.
Yeah. No, this is actually with 2 people that aren't like people I really talk to anymore, but we broke into his sister's place, who had been evicted, but all of her stuff was in there.
Oh, okay.
And when we went in there, like there was stuff, like there was cool, like not cool stuff, but like stuff everywhere that was like quote unquote takeable. And he was like, "Fuck it, this is my sister's stuff. We can have it." And there was a copy of Pulp Fiction, and there was a copy of Kids with no cases. And I was like, "Well, I've heard of Pulp Fiction, and I'd seen Kids, like, which is an amazing movie in its own right." And I sit down, I watch Pulp Fiction, and I get to the scene with Marcellus Wallace and Bruce Willis in that basement, and I'm like, this is so fucking hard to watch, yet I can't look away. I'm so interested. I want this movie to never end. And that's the thing, like, there's no dull spots with Pulp Fiction. Like, the only dull spot in that movie to me...
The diner.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the diner scene...
No, like, the 50s diner. Not the actual diner scene with the robbers and that, but when he...
I know what you mean. Yeah, like, those where they dance and all that shit.
Yeah,
like,
that was...
If that scene was cut, it wouldn't make a difference to that movie.
I think it does... It would make a difference in the sense that it showed that these people... it was already set up that Vincent wanted to keep his distance between Miss Wallace.
Right.
Right? Because he was afraid of getting closer. But then they just had so much in common...
Yeah.
That they were starting to be drawn together, which is where the conflict.
But don't you think that that's the only conversation that kind of like lingers too long?
It does,
because when you look at the major conversations in that movie, first one being in the car, second one's in the apartment, the third one, I believe, is the gold watch.
Yeah. And
then, like with the Christopher Walken, like all like the conversations you see. They're so, like, you can't take your eye off them almost. And, like, the opening conversation in the diner, like, it's so fucking well done. And, like, I read the script of Pulp Fiction. It was the first script I read. And, the first script that I read all the way through. And I was like, this is so fucking cool. And, like, the interaction between Tim Roth and, I think, Rosanna Arquette's character is so fucking... like it's so believable for some reason.
It's so natural born killers.
Yeah, it's so natural born killers, but don't you think it is natural?
Yeah.
It's naturalistic as hell. Like, to quote the guy from Reservoir Dogs, you got to be naturalistic as hell. Reservoir Dogs is another one where, like, my favorite scene in Reservoir Dogs, I actually rewrote this, basically plagiarized this in high school when I was in Beale. The scene where Tim Roth tells a story about, like, basically the commode story. Yeah. I rewrote that, but that scene to me, I think, is so, like, the fact that it's like a scene within a movie. How am I going to make this make sense? It's like a guy pretending to do something, knowingly trying to pretend to do something. That makes sense, but within a movie, and it makes it that much better because this guy's already a good actor. But then to see him act while acting is even more insane, and I think that goes to show you like how good of an actor he is, but also how good of a director Tarantino is, because Tarantino probably said, or maybe said to him like, okay, you're a cop that's undercover, and you don't want to get caught. And like, there's a scene where he's getting ready, puts a gun in his holster, puts another gun in his pocket, puts his ring on from like a bowl. Like, he takes his ring out of a bowl of pennies, which is like this little tiny stupid throwaway scene, but it just means something for some reason. Yeah. And it's like, it doesn't mean anything like I'm not like diving into the psychological shit of the movie. I'm not being, what's his name? What was our film crit teacher? Plantis. Oh yeah. I'm not being Plantis right now, but there was no phallic objects, but
no, totally. All the guns were a phallic object.
Yeah, this is a phallic
object. And they kept
object.
shoving those guns in people's faces. So.
Yeah, it was like a phallic, forcible...
Phallic means penis.
Yeah. Like, okay, one thing... that was a fun class, but that guy, all he talked about was phallic objects, man. And, like, very phallic in nature.
Which means
like,
penis.
Which means penis, cock. And it's like, holy fuck, pal.
Well, because he knew how to get a laugh. When you say penis, you're going to laugh, right? Yeah. Almost every time he said it, we giggle.
Right? Fuck, that was funny.
But I think, yeah... I don't know where we're going with the conversation at this point, but the idea of simply that, one, you got to have the passion for the film.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, which is why the first film in the series is usually always the best.
Right.
And which is why Kevin Feige of the crafter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is great, and why the Marvel Cinematic movies have been relatively top-notch films, right? We can all say, like, oh, this isn't a good one, but it's a good movie. Still, like, Doctor Strange isn't the best Marvel movie, but it's a good movie.
Right.
But he has a passion for this vision for the 22 films that he wanted to do, and he fought to get each one made.
Right.
And I think that's, if you have that passion when you're doing a film, which, like, Bill Zebub has a passion for making a movie. He wanted to make a movie. He made Clown and Nostra, and it was a passion of his. And I think when you put passion into it, like your Vinyl Docs was that you had a passion because, one, you shared that passion for having your dad tell the story, or
yeah,
right,
yeah.
Like, there was, it may not be like you had a passion for vinyl, but you wanted him to be able to tell his story.
Yeah, I wanted him to be cemented in the halls of
YouTube,
not of YouTube, but of my own personal, like, family history. Like, because when we're all dead and gone, our YouTube channels will probably still be active. Hopefully, no, they'll be deactivated. But in the long, like, for example, like, not to, like, be morbid or anything like that, but, like, God forbid anything ever happens, like, I have these movies, other people have these movies of me that I made and shit. You know what I mean? Like, so, like, to, like, make these, and, like, even if it's, because it's always been. And when you watch my documentary that I made on myself, you'll get, like, a sense that, like, it was, like, a family thing, all these movies, like, except for the Vinyl Doc, other than my dad being in it, but, like, him being able to, like, tell that story about, like, his buddy that passed away and, like, all that. I know it really meant a lot to him. And, like I said, like, that documentary is picking up a bit of attention in terms of view. It's my most viewed video that's, like, one of my films, not just, like, some fucking... I used to make not a lot, but I made, like, 2 or 3 lyric videos that got, like, a lot of fucking views, and then I deleted them, and, like... But, like, when it comes to YouTube, it's never been about, like, being, like, a YouTuber, like, being, like, a sensation. It's just been, like... I've always wanted to do stuff like what we're doing right now, like, talk film with people, because it's like, not only is it, like, therapeutic, but, like, it's fun because it's like something we both share interest
Well,
in.
we've been doing this for what, like going on almost 2 hours?
Yeah,
3 hours.
It's like, and you totally understand how like those Joe Rogan podcasts get so long because like you just start talking. But like back to the YouTube thing, it's like when I first started making YouTube videos, this is no shit. It was like back in 2010 or 11. These are all since been deleted, but I would make these videos of me like ranting about shit for my friend Mike to watch because like back in the like right out of high school, we're not doing shit. And I would go over there, hang out till 3 a.m, come home, make a video, send him the link, and he would watch it and laugh and leave a comment. But they were public, and then a few other people started watching them, and then I met a guy named Gene Paul Ace Peter, who's just like became a good buddy of mine. I haven't really talked to him that much in the last like little while, but really good dude. I met a lot of good people through YouTube, but like I said, it's never been. I'm not trying to be, You're
not trying to be PewDiePie.
I'm not trying to be PewDiePie. I'm just trying to be Bluntzillavideo, like talking about shit that we give a fuck about, or what I mean. It doesn't always have to be about movies and stuff. Like we got to do a podcast where we just talk about comics. You know what I mean? Like because like I know like we both kind of share a little bit similar interests in comics, but I know we could both bring cool,
I
different takes to the table.
G.I. Joe and Transformers were my comics of choice, and then I got into the X-Men.
Right.
So.
Like, yeah, but like, see, and I'm so far from that. I'm like in the a lot of like, well, for instance, like horror stuff.
Yeah.
Like a lot of EC shit. Oldish. I have a shitload of creepy, eerie. I love Famous Monsters of Filmland, Fangoria. And I have like a ton of like 4-issue minis from like back in my day of like, like Heroes used to sell. They probably still do like. A lot of like little 4-issue minis or 6-issue minis in the back, and like
the movie adaptations.
Yeah, and like I would buy all these cool ones from like Vertigo and like Dark Horse, and IDW became like a really big thing. Like IDW, I think like their biggest property was probably they had the that, but
that's
also
what brought them on the map.
Well, I know they do like IDW. They did I bought a lot. They did like Mars Attacks, Ninja Turtles, the fucking Transformers. Like they did all those crossovers with like Kiss and I remember when I was buying weekly, I was fucking getting like the a lot of like shit that I didn't really give a fuck about, and it one of my pull lists would pile up to like $50, and I'd be like, wow, like this is all stuff I'm not going to
comics,
read.
Oh my god.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I was getting like when the New 52 came out, I remember I grabbed a few things and like but then I was just like, okay, this is like I don't care about this. I don't want this to be about like me maybe being able to make a buck or two. That would be cool, but like I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on the shit that I care about. I don't want to focus on the what ifs, because like
you're not going to make money speculating in comic books is something that's never going to happen again.
No, definitely
because everyone's collecting them, so you never get.
Well, the way like because I got friends that do like a lot like through the years of the comic book videos I was making, I met a lot of comic book people, Gene Paul Ace Peter being one of them, but also the people that do a podcast called the New York Warriors, which is a group of people that met through me and Sean's off-air Google Hangouts, and they started to make this podcast. They're all guys that lived in New York, but they met through our Hangouts. Yeah. And they all met up and meet in person and like have barbecues and the whole nine, right? But it all started from this mutual love of something, and it's crazy, man. Like it's the thing about the internet is it's awesome because there's always something to talk about and there's always something to look up. Like if you're sitting there and you're like, wow, I remember, like for instance, are you familiar with the Angry Video Game Nerd?
Yeah, Angry Joe.
No, Angry Video Game Nerd. His name's James Rolfe.
Okay. He
does like the Cinemaskers his brand.
Okay, yeah.
Well, when I first discovered him, this is how I discovered this guy. So he does like these he does a character and he reviews these games, and I was sitting in my computer one day and I was like, what the fuck? What should I look up? And I was like, well, I remember I used to play that game on Nintendo. I didn't play it like at all because it was fucking stupid. It was the Rambo game on Nintendo. The old...
the original Rambo.
Yeah, so I was like, I wonder if anyone's ever made a video talking about that. And
of course.
I look it up and there's this video of this guy ranting and like saying the stuff that I was saying like 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. And it was just so cool to like
Well, that's
to see.
the thing with Shock Stock is it is a community, and I think that's why a lot of people are like, oh, I hope this thing grows to be really big and becomes huge. And I was like, no, I don't think
I actually said that to you in the parking lot that day, remember?
And I was like, yeah,
you're like, no.
Yeah, it needs to be like, because they take over an entire fucking hotel, right? Like they take over the Ramada Inn on Wellington Road in London, Ontario here, and you basically rent out. They book out the whole place, right? And then
it's nuts.
And the party doesn't stop. I mean, there was people partying until 5-6 a.m. on the Saturday, like Sunday morning. They were still partying. The new crew of the hotel comes in. There's people still partying in the hallways, and
there's like
yeah. And it's just, you come in. It's once a year. You come in. People come from all over Montreal, all over the world, come to this one place, and they meet their friends again, right?
One thing that was really cool for my dad was he loves that band Green Jelly, and remember they
premiered the video.
Here's a guy that doesn't, like, he's a horror fan, but he's not a hardcore guy, and he's not like, he doesn't know about like the kind of the culture type, like he doesn't delve deep into the culture, and like for him to go to a place and then see the premiere of a music video of a band that he likes, he said that was so fucking cool for him. And like to see like 2 cuts of it, you know what I mean? Like it was cool because like
accidentally 2 cuts of it. Yeah.
Shout out to the guy, Instagram user Lucky, I think _3111 or I so like 3. He was there at the Trauma booth, but I don't know what he does in Green Jelly, but his Instagram is fucking hilarious. Like he posts all kinds of like, you know, like clips of like people doing quote unquote fails. Like there's this one he posted last night of like this chick who just, like, she gets up and she pukes and then she starts running and she slips in her puke. And it's like it's all real shit, but it's so fucked. But getting to meet that guy was cool, and like getting to, you know, everything about Shock Stock has always been a blast. Like I went to it twice by myself, like when they were at Centennial Hall. And I was either drunk. No, I wasn't drunk. I pulled the all-nighter both times I went alone, but every other time I was drunk as fuck. Because I wasn't driving. Yeah. But then I started driving, and I'm like, okay, so now I don't drink at all, basically. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think that.
Well, like it's like everything now is there's a community for everything that you can think of, right? Comic books and horror movies and action movies and sci-fi movies and exploitation movies, they're all merging together, and we're now at a time where it's okay to like those things. In fact, it's the pop culture to like them now.
Yeah, it's like you're a clown if you don't like it.
For the kids who got beat up playing D&D in the 80s are now, oh my god, did you see Game of Thrones? Oh, I've seen.
They're like story. Now the ones getting all the broads and getting all the fucking,
and the jocks.
Jocks are like the dummies now.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It's like it's completely flipped. Like one of the coolest examples to explain that situation is in the movie 21 Jump Street, where like basically the nerds are the cool kids and like the jocks are like not even thought of. Like when I was in high school, there was no such thing as like a jock clique. There was like people that played football, and they came from every clique. Like there was like nerds that were on the football team, there was gangbangers, there was fucking preppy fucks, like there was everybody that played football and shit. Like
football brought everyone together. Like when I played it, I was in the comic books and into hip hop and that was the thing. And
did you go to Beale?
No, I went to South.
Okay.
I went to the Brainy School in London here because at the time they had the like a special group where if you were a gifted student who could do math really well, you went to South.
So gifted, not in the sense of like.
Yeah, they didn't have mutant superpowers.
Not like no, I mean like gifted as in like.
Yeah, they weren't riding. Yeah, they weren't riding the short bus there.
No, I had a buddy that went to South. But okay, so getting back to a horror subculture within the culture, I guess. What's your take on fanzines? And have you read any?
I used to like that's that. I mean, Fangoria was essentially a fanzine,
right?
For horror fans, that and Starlog, because they were the same company producing both, and that's how I found out about what movies were coming out. And,
right.
You know, like at the back of Starlog, or no, it was Starlog, Fangoria, and then there was Comic Scene, I think.
Right.
Those three, same publisher. The back of Comic Scene had a list of every single movie that was either being talked about, in production, or coming out soon. So I knew at some point they were there was after Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became a big hit cartoon-wise, they were talking about making a movie, and somebody was talking about making a movie based on adolescent black belt radioactive hamsters.
I have that comic.
Yeah, I have all of them. I have the 3D one. I've got the Clint. I think
the first time that we ever met might not have been the first time we met, but the first time we ever like worked together was on Bleeding Out.
Yeah.
And I remember right off the bat you started talking about comics, and I think we talked about that comic that day. You were like, yeah, you ever heard any of those like rip-offs? And you like mentioned that, and I was like, that's fucked. I have. Have you ever heard of Boris the Bear?
Yeah.
I've got Boris the Bear. Like, I'm telling you, we got to do a comic book.
Have you ever heard of interdimensional commando koalas?
I don't think so. I think
that was a ripoff of the adolescent black belt radioactive hamsters.
I got a really cool book that you should check out. It's got it's like, yeah, I fuck. Once my basement is like not like you know that, okay, so you know when you go into my, this is totally like no one's gonna give a fuck about this, but when you go down in my basement, there's like that one room.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, so that I want to turn that into an office kind of thing, but it also leaks there because I don't have an east trough that runs off the back deck there, and I want to put my comics down there and all that, so I can like kind of actually look at them, like get like a couple of those tables from Walmart and like,
and get the long boxes.
Yeah, so I can like flip through them and stuff, because like I got some shit you'd like to take a look at, and like there's like conversations within that. We could like do the same format where like we take a shitload of movies. Well, in this case, I think it was like 8
movies.
8.
Well,
not if you
Child's
count.
Play.
Yeah, there was all the Child's Play,
yeah.
But I think that it's. I'm mad that we didn't do this sooner, like the second episode. But like, definitely look out for more, because there's a lot to be talked about. Like, for instance, like this summer alone, like for the rest of the year, this is what we have to look forward to. We have the It Chapter 2. We have the new Godzilla. We have John Wick 3. We got 3 Child's Play, 3 from Hell, the new Tarantino film,
Dead Don't Die.
Dead Don't Die. What one's that again?
That's the Bill Murray zombie movie.
Right. Is that a comedy?
Yeah, it's a zombie comedy.
Okay.
With a huge cast of big name stars.
What was your take on that zombie explosion, like back in like 2009?
That's like, it wasn't 2009. That's I can say that. Like, wasn't it?
It was probably like 2007.
2003. Is when it started. Shaun of the Dead brought it back.
You think Shaun of the Dead?
Shaun of the Dead and 28 Days Later.
You think so? And the remake of Dawn of the Dead.
And the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Those that brought into the zombie and like that's, I watched the first episode of History of Horror. Eli Roth's History of Horror was about zombies, and it went into that and how like the zombie genre died down, and it was video games, specifically Resident Evil, that brought the zombie genre back up. And it wasn't until like all the kids who were playing Resident Evil when they were like 8 or 9, when they became of age to go and got into movies, is when Shaun of the Dead and Dawn of the Dead and all those movies took off. And since then, zombies have been they've been popular again, and I think they're dying down again. Like Walking Dead became a cultural phenomenon. Mm-hmm. If you consider that, like the most watched TV show at the time was Walking Dead. Could you have imagined that when Night of the Living Dead or Day of the Dead or Evil Dead was in theaters? Like, people
would laugh at that.
Yeah, they'd laugh at that a zombie movie would be the most talked about. But as they're saying, as they said in the show, is that the zombie is a metaphor for all sorts of things. Whether it's the mindless capitalism, socialism, conformity, all of these. The zombie is a metaphor for that, and how the humans interact and survive in that is a way to tell different allegories for it. But I think right now the zombies are dying out, in a sense, no pun intended. That's going to die out, but I think we're coming to the end of that chapter of the zombies, and it's going to take another visionary to bring that genre back after a period of time.
Do you blame Piranha 3D for the explosion of like monstery movies that came out. Like that. Do you blame Piranha 3D for like Sharknado?
No, I don't. I don't think. I think if you're gonna go that far, I think Deep Blue Sea would be the one to blame for that.
Really?
And the reason I say that is because Deep Blue Sea, I saw that in the theater. It wasn't a big hit. Like, people thought it was good, but it wasn't. It didn't capture the mind. But it did really well on DVD and home release.
Right.
And so you've got a bunch of kids watching that movie, growing up, and just like Resident Evil in the video games, craving a flick like that. And
I think
that's where you came. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, all right, here's Piranha 3D, here's Sharknado, here's, all of those creature movies start coming back again, because when people are young and they grow up, they want what they had when they were kids, but they want it better than what they saw. Yeah,
because like with people like, say for you, for example, like if you grew up on Transformers and stuff, and then you watch the Transformer film, and it's completely opposite of what you remember.
Shit on him and everything. Although the latest Bumblebee was amazing. So,
was it?
Yeah. Which I think we mentioned last time too.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I just think that there's so many things from when we're kids that like we latch on to for the rest of our lives. Like, I've seen Jaws before I've seen Deep Blue Sea, but I definitely remember watching Deep Blue Sea a lot, and I remember just like loving, because I always loved Jaws, right? And I loved sharks. I did a project on sharks when I was like in grade 2. But for me, it was like this, and like that's why I didn't really watch any of those like giant shark versus octopus robot and like all those kind of movies, because first of all, I thought they were cheaply made, and I knew it was going to be a CG fest, and like that's never been what I've been about when it comes to horror, because like I like the creative process of it, and even if if it wasn't going to be Kayla doing the makeup effects on people in my movies, it would have been me doing it. I'm glad that she did it, but like I think that creating something that's actually being filmed is more effective than using CG, because when you use CG, it just takes you out of it, because unless it's really fucking good, like really well done.
Talking top notch Marvel.
Yeah,
that type of movie.
Yeah, but if me and you were gonna make a movie and like the killer was gonna be 100% CG, we'd be like insane.
We'd be making Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, we would be making like a puddle of pee. You know what I mean?
That's my
a puddle.
Funnily enough, that's my next movie. It's about a killer puddle of pee.
Yeah, Piss Puddle.
Yeah,
the Piss Puddle Massacre.
Piss Puddle's the character's name, and he just makes people slip and they fall onto knives and all sorts of shit. The puddle just moves around the floor, so you never know where it is.
Yeah. So I think now that we've been talking about piss puddles, I think we'll call it for this episode of the Bluntzillavideo podcast. And
because we got to go write that script now. So.
We're gonna go and cast it. I'm gonna go take a piss in the back and cast it. So thanks for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode, which we'll film that within reason this time. We're not gonna fuck around. So
yeah, we're out of school. We got time.
Yeah, we're actually out of school. We don't have to write any fucking. Actually, one final thing. What film did you do your essay on in Film Crit?
Predator.
And what was your argument?
My argument was that Predator was a deconstruction of the male, or the alpha male.
Okay, I did Cannibal Holocaust, arguing that the real cannibals were the film crew, and I don't know why I want to know that. But
to be fair, I bombed that assignment. I had a great narrative and stuff, but I could not find the points to support my argument.
Well, I can't find any more points to continue with this podcast, so let's call it.
We're done.
Here, you gotta end it.